It's 10:30 in the morning.
It's 10:30 in the morning.
Kevin Armstrong's just turned up with 2 bottles of vodka. And we're going to try some now because you are not even a closet vodka fan, right? You are quite openly out of the closet in terms of vodka.
That is a fair assessment, yeah. Vodka was such a massive part of every drink we made 20 years ago would probably have been vodka, right? That was just all we sold. So you just drank a lot of vodka. And I like vodka. There is a lot of nuance between vodka that I think most people just skip over and just like, they're all the same. And you're buying brand or you're buying a lifestyle choice. But actually, there are huge differences, I think, between vodka and a good one from a bad one for certain. So yeah, I brought you some vodka because I know that you are keen too.
I am keen, yeah. Well, I need to learn more. So when you say like 20 years ago, there was a lot of vodka cocktails around. I remember this. When I got into bartending, that was it was still very much the vodka rage, craze phase. But you were trying them outside of the cocktails as well, because obviously, the whole thing about vodka, its kind of shtick, for right or wrong, is that you put it in a cocktail and you can pretty quickly and fast sort of mask the with other ingredients. So, and of course, vodkas do taste different in isolation. Were you trying them in isolation back then?
Yeah. So this was one of the bars that I worked at was called Sosho, and it was literally 100 and odd meters around the corner from where we are.
Yeah.
And there was a basement bar there, and we tried to build in the same way that you have done with whiskey. We tried to build a vast collection of vodkas, mainly because that was the thing that people were drinking, but also there was a lot of really good stuff, interesting stuff that wasn't necessarily or readily available. And we looked at, there was some great stuff coming out of the States, a brand called Charbe that made brilliant flavored vodkas. And I talked with Jonathan about this, and we were just like, let's try and put a collection of excellent vodkas together. So that was one of my tasks at one point, was to just try and source as many good vodkas, which usually meant then trying them in isolation outside of drinks. You are right. Once you put it in a drink, a little bit.
Depends on the drink.
It depends on the drink.
Yeah.
It totally does depend on the drink.
Martini is a little bit different to
a match spring punch. Or a Russian spring punch is probably more commonly correct.
Yeah.
So yes, we tried all of this stuff, and one of the things that I did for quite a long time, from probably like the mid 2000s to the early 2010s, was I worked with a vodka brand to basically deliver what was then a global training session. It was with Finlandia. And a colleague of mine at the time called Michael Butt, he and I traveled extensively from probably circa 2006, 2007, right through to about 2013. And we just delivered this vodka session. It was about, I think, maybe 2.5 hours. And all of that was it was kind of brand agnostic. There are loads of different styles. If you try them side by side, you can tell that there are different styles. And you might like some and you might like a lot, and you're free to make the choice that you want to make. But there were just some brilliant things. And I just really enjoyed that work. And I drank a lot of vodka. It was just nice.
What did you learn about vodka? What was the sort of most eye-opening thing about the category?
Ooh, good question. I think for me, there is definitely a qualitative difference, and to me also a noticeable difference with raw material, right? You can just, something that has been manufactured well leaves something extra on the palate that others do not.
Yeah.
And you're right, again, in certain drinks you don't detect some of that stuff, but if you get used to drinking vodka neat, and this is just through repetition a lot of the time, so much more comes out than you might imagine, but you just have to keep trying. So that raw material thing, I think if you just continually try vodka against vodka against vodka, you really start to pick out some of those things.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it. I like the challenge. I like trying to work out what's what. We did something at the bar a couple of months ago where we lined up 8 and I didn't know what was what, and we all just went through just trying to pick out. We knew what the brands were because we know what we stock, but I find that stuff brilliant. I love doing it because it tests your palate. It gets you excited about trying things, looking for flavors. And if you practice it, you get quite good.
Yeah. I think a lot of the time, in a way, like sort of whiskey or agave spirits is sort of low-hanging fruit for distinction between products. It's like, well, of course that tastes different to that. Like, you know, they've been the production process has treated it in a completely different way, and the end result is completely different. You know, that one's been put in a red wine cask, this one's been smoked or whatever. With vodka, because so much of the production is relatively standardized across brands. I mean, you've got to do multi-column distillation, right? You've got to get above 96%. The distinction between these products is that much smaller, and I think for a lot of people, they're like, it's too hard to actually attempt to kind of pick these apart. I'm not even going to bother. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to say, oh, all vodka tastes the same.
Yeah. So there was this chap who I'd gone to like this session, and he's there advocating how he hates like half a dozen vodka brands. But then literally in the same sentence, he's like, all vodkas taste the same. I was like, well, then those things don't quite add up, dude, if you think about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's not, I don't say laziness because it's probably not laziness, but you maybe just have to work a little bit harder to pick up some of those things. And it is easy to just go, they're all the same, but they're definitely not all the same as well, you know?
Yeah. How did you get into bartending?
Started in 1998. In Oxford with a brilliant group of bars and restaurants called I think the business was called Clinton Leisure. It's owned by a guy called Clinton Pugh, and he owned a wicked little kind of high tea coffee place that turned into a cocktail bar at night, a brilliant pizza place that did loads of cocktails, had the most amazing horseshoe cocktail bar as you walked in, just a striking business. Did like a North African Spanish inspired tapasy cocktail bar just on the same street right next door in the same building, and then had another bar further up in the same part of town in Oxfordshire. And he had a couple of people that worked for him that knew a bit about drinks. And I started there in 1998 and I loved it.
How long were you there for?
So on and off, I was there for about 4 years. So I left, I moved to London in 2000, sorry. So I'd worked full time from 1998 to 2000. Then I went to university, and then every summer holiday I would go back and work as a bartender in primarily one of those businesses. But the one that I started in was on the high street in right in the heart of Oxford.
What's it called?
It was called the Grand Cafe.
Oh, I've been there. I lived in Oxford in 2001 to 2002.
I would almost certainly, in one of those businesses, I would have been there bartending for sure.
And I would have been drinking.
Oxford was awesome. Like a brilliant space for cool cocktail bars. Right across town from east side of Oxford to the west, there was some really good bars.
Is this where you picked up your strong Oxfordshire accent?
Yeah, quite. No, Durham born and bred in a small town called Bishop Auckland. And then mum and dad had ran pubs and stuff forever. That's what they did for a living.
Grew up in it then.
I grew up in pubs, or bars or clubs. Mum and dad never did anything different. My dad worked for Scotch and Newcastle Brewery, so I was a drayman for a long, long time, delivering beer all over Newcastle. And then they got into pubs, so always lived in a pub or near a pub or whatever.
Do you think that like it must have been a big influence on you becoming a bartender?
Yeah, well, you're just around that environment all the time.
Normalized.
It's totally normalized. Me and my brother, so mum and dad would go to work, and if they were both at work and they didn't want to leave us, they would take us to work, right? So they ran a cricket club in Bishop Auckland, which was a big old space. There's a proper cricket pitch and a football pitch next door. So they would take us to work, and it would not be uncommon. There was a pool table at the end of the kind of hall. So me and my brother, my mum would give us £1 coins worth of 5p pieces because pool was 5p a game.
Good old days.
Good old days. It literally 5p a game. So we'd get a bag of 5p pieces, and my brother and I, whilst mum and dad were working, we would just use all of those 5p pieces.
How good are you at pool now?
I'm all right.
Yeah? That means you're pretty good, doesn't it?
All right, yeah. It is a game that I love and I've played a lot.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah.
I like pool as well. We had a pool table in our sixth form common room, which
awesome.
is just like, if you want kids to be educated, don't stick a pool table in the space.
No.
It's,
No.
So it was like 6 games a day every day for a couple of years. And I mean, I've definitely lost some of the touch, but sometimes the magic's there. And I actually was playing pool in Manchester the night before last, and I very nearly 7-balled the guy I was playing. I got to the black off the break as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it was American pool table though, so the pockets are
buckets. It's a bit easier.
Yeah.
I mean, this is obviously will end up going out on the internet at some point, and he's going to hate me for saying it, but when I went up to Manchester, Joe Schofield plays a bit of pool.
Does it?
Fancies himself as a bit of pool, a bit of a pool player. And we went out one night, and I took quite a bit of money off him, which I think he was really upset by, but I'm sure he won't mind me saying that.
I remember playing Joe actually at pool in New Orleans once. We were in the Saint, which is maybe my favorite dive bar on the planet.
Oh, yeah.
It's an absolute, it's got a vending machine with dildos.
Yeah, awesome.
It's such a great bar. Anyway, it was Tim Phillips and myself were playing both the Schofields, so we called it Schofields versus the World.
Awesome.
And we beat them.
Yeah.
So no money exchange hands.
Oh, no,
only dildos.
You've got money on it, makes it just that little bit more exciting. Especially, taking Joe Schofield's money. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Oxford to London. Tell me about that transition.
So applied for college. Moved to London. Was traveling in the States at the time, and I applied to Manchester, to I think maybe Edinburgh and a few other places. Got a place at UCL in 2000 and moved to London in 2000. But at this time I was still working back in Oxford at the bar, so we could make enough money during off term to get through term. So probably for the first year and a half in London, did like the odd part-time job, but mainly earned through bartending still back in Oxford. And then in 2000, would have been late 2002, September 2002, I was in my final year and was just incredibly skint and needed to work. So applied for jobs all over town. Everywhere that I could basically put my CV, I did, that looked like a good cocktail bar. Like I wasn't short of experience. I'd been bartending for 3 or 4 years already. And ended up landing a job at Sosho, which was round the corner. And the most fortuitous stroke of luck, because it was a brilliant bar. And I had no idea when I walked in. It was another bar. But it was a great one.
Yeah. So Sosho opened in 2002, was it?
Yeah, I think maybe it was 2001. I think it was 2001. It was established for sure, because I think that was the last of the 3 like match bar-esque bars to open. The first one was in Clerkenwell, I think it was like 1997, and then match bar W1 maybe 99 or 2000, and then Sosho later, so maybe 2000, 2001.
Yeah, and then alongside that you had the Player and Milk and Honey popping up, and
Trailers,
other bits as well.
And the East Room, which was above Sosho.
That's right. And obviously, if anyone wants to learn more about that, listen to the Jonathan Dania. So we do talk about them a little bit.
Some business.
Yeah, incredible, really. And well, as we and Jonathan and I emphasised then, really sort of changed the game. And I think in as much as any other way, it was with the bar teams and the training program, which of course you were instrumental in. So tell me about, you're walking in as a student, and then suddenly at some point you become basically the head bar manager for the entire group, running all the training. So tell me about that process, getting from, because there'll be bartenders listening to this who are like, I'm the skint student, how do I become the group bar manager for the biggest, the most significant bar group in cocktail world in London at that time?
I mean, it really was. There were some other brilliant bars or good bars, but Match Bar was still a cut above all of those. So I went into social, got this job, was doing part-time, really loved it through, like, it got to the point really where I was doing a lot of sport at college, and I was studying at college, but actually the thing that I was looking forward to pretty much every week was Friday, Saturday, because I was part-time, so I just got the weekend shifts because that's what you give a student, right? And I just couldn't wait to get to work. Like, making drinks was awesome. And we had a brilliant crowd of people who were responding to those drinks. And everything about that environment was just, when you're 21, 22, like you couldn't ask to work in a better spot.
Break it down a little bit more. What was so good about it? Was it this sort of piecing together the ingredients and creating something, or was it more about the vibe, or was it the sort of adoration from the guests?
No, there wasn't. No, adoration wasn't. No, like it wasn't like, oh my god, you're a bartender. I had this brilliant story.
Presumably you're flipping bottles.
No. We are definitely, we're not doing any of that. I'm terrible at flair. Just the crowd wanted to drink mixed drinks, right? And once I'd learned that actually this wasn't just like an everyday bar group selling everyday drinks, like once or were made aware of the people who are involved and just the quality of the people that you're working with, like the other bartenders, it became clear this was different. Like this was not just any bar. And those places were so busy, and we would just churn out cosmopolitans, churn out in like an exceptional way, not just like high-end churning, like Cosmos and mojitos and old fashions and Russian swing punches, and every second drink was a mixed drink. It was just the best, and the music curations, particularly at Sosho, was great. And it was late, and you'd get home at by the time I would get back to where I lived, it was probably 4:30, 5 o'clock. But it was probably the best part of my week. Like it instantly became clear I was never going to ditch college, but it instantly became clear that like.
What were you studying?
Psychology.
Okay, well, there's that factors into the bartending
A little bit.
Yeah.
I don't remember a great deal of it. It's a really cool thing. It's like the degree program at UCL for psychology was one of the only science-based ones. The rest were like arts-based, and I don't know. I genuinely, honestly, I don't have any idea why they accepted my application. Like I should never. It was. Yeah, it brought me to London, and that was without doubt the best thing that could have happened if you want to be a bartender.
So you finished college and then went full-time bartending?
Yeah, so they offered me a job at Match Bar W1, which is right in the heart of the West End. It was the flagship match bar, and it was and like again another level different to Sosho. Like I think I still would probably say Sosho's the best place I've ever worked. Like it was just superb.
JD said it was a huge bill cost, that place, like massive.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm probably misremembering this, but I remember him telling me at some point, I think, what the original rent was, because it was basically a disused, I think, like gallery space or warehouse space type thing. And I don't know how much he spent on the bill, but I remember him telling me, I'm sure that the original rent was really quite low. Which is, I think, why I took it on. But the space itself was just incredible. Like
he said, he spent 2 or 3 million on it. In 2001.
Wow. Okay, yeah. I actually didn't know that. That's a lot of cash.
Yeah, it is,
but it was doing good money. And there were
you had the East Rooms as well, right?
East Rooms came a lot later.
Yeah.
And that was the floors, I think 1, 2, and 3 above, and that also was.
So that kind of saved the bill cost. I'm factoring that into it as well.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense. Yeah. I imagine like 75% of that would have gone on the East Room, because that was just another level. So yeah, got finished my degree, stopped working for probably 2 or 3 months while I did that, and then got offered the job to be the bar manager at Match Bar W1 in the West End. And it was either a choice of basically doing that or moving home. So I said yes. And I remember the first day that I walked in, I went there, it was Monday mornings, like 9 o'clock. I'm not sure if I've ever told you this, maybe I did. I walked downstairs and like I'm waiting to meet the GM and there's no one around. And it was like, the entrance to the building was on the right, the main bar. And there was another doorway on the left, so you had to come outside. And you went down this stairwell, and most of the storage for like consumables and the office were in this basement just outside of Match Bar. And I knock on the office door and no answer, is locked and I don't have a key. And there's then this storage room next door, which has got like a crushed ice machine in it and glassware and stuff. And I walk in and like 9:10 or whatever it is. And the head bartender at the time, the senior bartender who were there, doing a stock take are like cutting up on top of the ice machine, and I just walk in and I'm just like, what the fuck have I walked into?
Wow.
And I just like, I just like completely like, I
That's
don't know what's,
crazy.
you're crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah. So
and
is it up
these-
from the night before, or is it just getting going in the
I
morning?
genuinely couldn't tell you, like, but that was day one. Yeah. I won't say their names, but I remember their names.
Yeah.
But that's what I walked into, and they kind of both like look up at me, and I'm just like, "Good morning."
And how did that affect you? Did you sort of think like, wow, this group's putting out world-class drinks, but also there's some cracks showing at the seams here.
It didn't feel like cracks. It just felt like, that's
This is the lifestyle.
yeah, a little bit, a little bit. And I'm just, I mean, that was even, I wasn't naive, but I was just like, this is pretty raw.
Yeah.
So
Do you think that the culture's changed
yeah,
enough now that that's not
I
really
would-
going on anywhere anymore?
I would like to think so.
I think it probably has.
I think so. That
There's probably some outlying situations where that kind of thing goes on, but in general, it's not the kind of mood of London bar scene anymore. I wouldn't.
that would be my assessment too.
Yeah.
But, and I think, I don't know, it probably took me like, I had no authority. I was brand new. So
Yeah.
even though I was probably going to be in charge of these people, which I ultimately was, like, I was 22 and I'm just like, I don't know what to do about this. What do you do, right? So
There's various options.
yeah, there are. So I got on, and it took me maybe a month or 2 months, but I eventually moved everyone out and ended up with a group of brilliant people that I trusted and that got on with me and I got on with, and it was a brilliant bar. Loved it.
In case you haven't heard, this is going to be the summer of the Paloma. It's a fantastic long tequila drink, the bedfellow of the margarita, citrusy, fresh, and incredible vibrant pink color. If you're going to make this drink, then you're going to need this from my sponsor, Fever Tree, their pink grapefruit soda. Made with fresh, ruby red grapefruits, it adds that wonderful sweet, sour, and slightly bitter tang to a nice Paloma. Take yourself a highball glass, fill it up with plenty of ice, add a splosh of your favorite tequila, and then top up with Fever Tree's pink grapefruit soda. Finally, and most importantly, finish with a slice of pink grapefruit. Now, let's get back to the show.
So I mentioned already there's sort of training programs. How did all of that sort of manifest itself? How did it come out? Because it seems like so far in your career, I'm seeing these sort of incremental steps of like, right, move from there. This group, great, fun, nice concept. Then on to, Sosho. All right, high-end cocktails, turning them out fast. Then you're kind of running match bar, W1. So there's all these sort of steps that are taking you up. How did you become sort of conscious of the training side of bartending?
Yeah, so that was actually quite clear from relatively early on. So the head bartender at the time at Sosho was a guy called Michael Butt, is how I met him, and we're still friends today.
Yeah.
And it was, I got chatting to him a lot, and obviously as being a bartender in a group, I got invited to these training sessions, and these training sessions were every month on a Tuesday, and you had to turn up and listen for an hour, 2 hours, usually 2 hours, I think, about a spirit category. And it became very clear very quickly that the people who were teaching us about these things were not just like, they were proper.
And these were from brands? Or
No, not at all. There was no brand involvement.
Yeah.
This was like independent, best in class experts. So the tequila sessions we would get once a year, or slightly more frequently perhaps, were from Tom Estes, right? So he would come and privately talk to all of the bartenders in that group about tequila. And him and Julio aside, there's no one better to learn that information from, right? And we had the equivalent individuals in all of the categories. So Dave Broom or Ian Wisniewski for vodka, aptly. And it was very clear that this was no ordinary training program. So I was like part of that and learned a lot through that. And then after a couple of years of Sosho and Match Bar and a bit more Sosho and what have you. I am basically was offered the chance to head up the drinks program for all of the venues, during which time and they'd open Milk and Honey and the player was already there. And I mean, just the obvious answer is yes, I'm going to take that job, because that was probably the best job in bartending at the time, is looking after that group and having choosing who we recruit and how we train and the menus and development. All of it was it was a great job.
I bet. And a really cool time to be
Unbelievable.
in the middle of the sort of London bar scene as well, as it was sort of super, like really sort of taking off. I seem to remember, like, because I think probably the first time I visited London with my now wife was probably around 2002, 2003. And, it was right around the time Class magazine was firing pretty hard on all cylinders. Source guides, as they were then, were coming out. Source guides to Drink and Drinking, with all the the bar reviews and the spirit reviews as well. And so the whole kind of culture was coming together with great cocktail bars as well, and superstar bartenders coming through. Such an amazing time.
It was, yeah.
What's your sort of fondest memory of that whole experience?
I loved every minute of it. Like, there were weeks where the hours were brutal, right? I mean, you just all you do is you just turn up and make thousands of pounds worth of drinks. And I was close to losing my job a couple of times for, the demands were high and expectations were high, and if you weren't delivering, everyone goes through that, I think. But in general, like, we had access to the best people. Jonathan's business had the best bars. Everything was great. I was getting, once I got into that role, I was getting invited to just about everywhere. Like, if you could get into the Match Bar as a brand, you basically made it, because you'd get brilliant menu listings, you'd get access to brilliant bartenders. And like you, I distinctly remember all that material that, like, you could buy the source guide in WH Smith, like
for like £5.97.
Exactly. Exactly that.
Really weird price.
Yeah,
it was.
In fact, cheap. I moved house relatively recently, and I found the Guide to Drinking, which I don't know when that was, probably mid 2000s. It had green and red in it, so a little fair way back. And I've still got original source guides from earlier than that had those spirits things. And I sent some screen grabs to the team about, this is how you found out about stuff. If you didn't just look up where's cool near me, if you wanted to learn about drinks or bars, you basically read that. And it was just such a great resource.
And they were softback, paperback.
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
so they were absolutely destroyed.
They did. Yeah. Simon did brilliant work on that. Like, his resource to bartenders was like, that was the place for most people, because they didn't buy old books, they just read the Guide to Drinking and the product guides, and it was what a brilliant thing.
I mean, I think there was a sort of, I don't know, what's one up from a trifecta, quadfecta?
It sounds good. Yeah.
So you've got
sounds good.
You've got the bars that were, really taking shape in London at that time, and not only Match Bar Group, there are other great bars. Lab, of course, one of the famous ones.
Yeah.
Lonsdale was one of
was great,
bars, and many others besides.
Montgomery Place,
fantastic. Yeah, so that was such a great bar. It's funny, actually, when you talk about that era, and actually the hotel bars don't really pop up in the conversation, do they? It was a different time.
So the library bar, I remember Jonathan taking about 20 of us to the library bar. And, again, I don't know how old I was, 23, 24. Like, people of my age did not go to those places. Like, the price point of access was just so unbelievably high that I'm only going if someone's taking me and someone's paying. And I remember going to places like that with Jonathan and just being like, okay, these places exist. I didn't really know about them because they weren't places I would frequent.
Well, I don't think they marketed themselves to anyone other than sort of middle-aged, high net worth kind of thing. So the quadfecta bars, you had bartenders. Obviously, the likes of Dick Bradshaw, yourself, I guess Nick Strangeway, Ben Reed, and various others. Sorry, I didn't name everyone of that era that were really kind of becoming the, I guess, figureheads, poster childs, whatever you want to call it, of the movement at that time. You had the publications, which largely was Simon Difford,
Yeah, it was,
and then the brands as well, which were coming in too. What do you remember about that time in terms of product? I mean, we've talked a little bit about vodka, but gin was really, that gin thing hadn't taken off at that time at all. It was still half a dozen brands of that.
Yeah.
But what do you remember about, I don't know, like rum, whiskey, tequila at that time?
So I think we were in a unique position and spoiled because to give you an example, the house pour brands at Match Bar, and this is when I started, the house tequila was Cuervo Tradicional, which I think we'll both agree at that period in time was an exceptional tequila.
Like value for money, incredible. And in that pistol bottle as well. Yeah, right? So cool.
And you could walk into every other bar in London confident that no one else is pouring that, right? So we had this brilliant tequila back when 100% agave kind of meant something. And we had this amazing back bar of tequilas that included Siete Leguas and Patron, and we even had a Sotol, and the range was just exceptional. And on the American whiskey side, we poured Woodford Reserve, right? And we were comfortably the biggest Woodford Reserve count in the UK, probably in Europe, I would guess, because it was just such an unknown quantity. So you've got Traditional, you've got Woodford Reserve. The house Scotch was Compass Box Islay.
Wow.
And you're just like, these things are, and you start to click because you go to everywhere else, and these things aren't even on the back bar. They're certainly not in the rail. They're not even in the back bar.
No. I mean, if you were pouring those products today, does Tradicional still exist?
Oh, it does. Absolutely, it does.
Yeah.
I would argue.
But I mean, it used to be. It was really kind of like right there, front and center, wasn't it? I mean, I worked for Diageo at a time when we were selling it, and it was in so many. Later on than when you're talking about, but like the sort of 2009, 2008. That was in a lot of speed rails by that point.
Yeah. But in 2002, it certainly was not. And it became clear that we had access, this definitely wasn't me at that point. This was other people, but we had access to things that no other bars had access to, and someone was making decisions about product quality that were so far ahead of what anyone else was doing. So that my memory of that is just thinking, like, how have I landed a job here? Like, these things are brilliant. The people I'm working with in general are brilliant. We've got someone who's in charge of the company who just seems to know more about creating bar spaces and bringing in the right people. So Sasha or Dale, like, there's just all of these elements. It was unique and brilliant.
Are there any brands from that time that you remember fondly that aren't around anymore, or are not getting a lot of love anymore these days?
That's a good question. No, I don't think so.
I mean, Zubrowka is a brand that it was kind of everywhere. It was in so many drinks.
Yeah,
and it was. You're right. It was huge. The volume of it was huge. I believe the volume's still pretty massive. It's just
I imagine it is. Yeah,
so much more.
Yeah, that was a common. We went through a lot of that. It was listed in a couple of drinks on the match menu. It was a drink. Please don't. I hope I don't get this wrong. It was a drink called I think it was a Mitch Martini, which had Zubrowka and peach and passion fruit and maybe apple juice. I think that was it. God, I hope I've got that right. And people were ordering Zubrowka and apple juice.
Yeah,
which was
a big drink. Wasn't it?
It was called a Tatanka.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was like I can't remember when I did this. I did a trial. There was a bar right in the heart of Soho. I think it was called Teatro. And Teatro was owned by a footballer called Lee Chapman, who played for Leeds. And it was like a super trendy bar. Like, I think it's a casino now, something like that. And I've got a picture of the menu because I took a picture and I stole a menu because I did a trial shift and I hated it. Like, it was everything about all of the things that we do for a living that I didn't like. the client base was not very nice.
Right.
And I was told to make these cosmopolitans, and I tried one, and it was horrible. And I was like, I don't think this is very nice. And obviously I'm brand new, and they're just like, shut up, make cosmopolitans. So I did. But one of the things I remember was I made a lot of Zubrowka and apple juices. That was just like,
I'm kind of got ingrained into you.
yeah, it's just, oh, there's another Zubrowka and apple juice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose that is one brand that is.
I mean, I don't know if we necessarily lament the loss of it. It's an interesting product, quite unique tasting.
Yeah,
product.
and delicious.
Yeah.
And they make a vodka, which I hope you'll end up writing about,
Yeah.
that is not flavored.
Yeah.
That is also very, very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I suppose vodka is that mosquito again.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
bugging me.
I have a feeling there might be more than one.
Yeah, I think yeah.
And not just be one lone ranger or a mosquito.
It's tormenting us.
So we are talking about vodka again, but I mean, this seems to be some sort of magnetic draw that keeps bringing us back.
Yeah.
So maybe, do you want to talk about the vodka that you brought, which I'm working my way through quite fast here?
Quite a few months ago, we got dropped off a couple of bottles, and the brand is this is absolutely not a brand advertisement at all. This is just happenstance. We got dropped these bottles off, and the brand is called Desi Daru, and they sat in the office for a really long time, and I didn't open them. And yes, that one. And I wasn't overly in a rush to open them. And about, I don't know, 5 months ago, I was cleaning the office, needed to get rid of some stuff. So I'm going to try these before I just get shot of them. And sometimes you just come across things and you're expecting one thing and you get something completely different.
Yeah.
And I just thought,
what you're saying is you had low expectations.
Look, that is a very fair reflection of my thought process. Yes, which is why it sat there for so long.
Yeah.
But actually, I opened it, and I opened the mango one first. And the minute you take the cap off, as I'm sure you can testify, the smell is outrageous.
Have you got an empty glass?
Yeah, I have got an empty glass. Yeah, can I put it there?
Yeah, put it there and I'll pour it.
The smell is outrageous, and outrageous in a good way. And the taste is also pretty exceptional. So it's just that was all it was. I thought I'd bring them because I know you are potentially looking at writing a book on vodka.
Yep.
And I thought I'd bring you a couple.
I've signed the contract now.
Oh,
so
really?
I've got to do it.
Wow, okay. Pressure's on.
Yeah. But just before we started, we talked about this brand a month or so ago in Scotland.
Yes.
And you were saying how good it was. And then you brought the bottle in. I took the cap off the mango one, Alfonso mango, and smelt it. And I was like, oh, wow, this smells amazing. Got it in the glass. Oh, God.
It's great, right?
It's just such a beautiful smell.
And to the point whereby I don't know, which is what I'm saying. It's like, I don't know how they've done it.
Yeah.
Like, it smells like fresh mango.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it definitely smells like fresh mango, but I think also, you get those bags of, it's not dry mango, but it's sort of semi-dry. It's like sticky.
Halfway between,
yeah.
I know the stuff, yeah.
It smells like only one of them, and that is one of the most delicious sort of fruit products on the planet, I think, which, I mean, maybe I'm a sucker for mango. I absolutely love it. But I wouldn't normally think it would be good in a vodka. I mean, mango vodka, you see that and you think this is going to be something like Umbongo.
Yeah, you do, yeah. And it's not.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's great, right?
Wow.
It's great. And there's no stringency. It's just like, it feels like fruit and vodka and then more fruit. And it does exactly what you expect, but like probably a lot more than that. I love it. So yeah, I just thought I'd bring them for you to try because they're useful. And the classic vodka is also very delicious and good mouthfeel and like a nice sweetness to it. And it's just a job very well done, I think.
This is the problem of writing a vodka book, and I'd be interested in some advice from you or your opinion. Vodka's so vast, right? I mean, there's products that aren't even really called vodka, but they kind of are vodka. I mean, schnapps sort of falls under that category in many ways. And then, of course, you've got flavored vodkas as well, which is another book in its own right.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So when you start to approach this topic, obviously there's the obvious ones, the sort of famous vodka brands and, the vodka history and production and everything. But how far do you go with it? Because you could end up going so far that it's just impossible to sort of address it all, right? You have to compromise at some point. So what do you think from both a bartender's point of view and a potential consumer who might want to buy a book about vodka?
So when when Michael and I did worked with Finlandia. This was again a long time back, and we do this for a long period of time. We wrote this training program, and thank the Lord, both in a good way and a bad way. There wasn't much by way of on-camera recording equipment or good quality cameras to take stills, right? Because Mike and I would basically, the first like 20-25 minutes was about the history of distillation through to vodka, through to flavored vodkas, and how those things have been brought to life. And we kind of acted this out in fancy dress, just going through the various stages to get to where we were, where we're talking about good quality column distillation, and most of the impurities are gone, because vodka wasn't obviously always like that.
Yeah.
So we had these like kind of comedy hats that we would wear to represent the various eras. And I'm very
Sounds a bit like horrible histories.
It's a bit like, it was a bit like, but it genuinely made people laugh.
Yeah.
And there was definitely a couple of shots of me on the internet wearing like a Viking hat and various other things. But it was fun and it was relatively engaging, I think. So we would kind of draw people in with this like semi-serious two guys that clearly have no pride.
Very little acting ability,
Yeah,
right?
well,
or self-worth.
Totally. Talk about vodka. And yeah, we got into production, and you're right. Like there is a vast amount to talk about. More I think than people give vodka credit for.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it's sort of the analogy again is sort of the flavor of vodka as well. People think there's not that much in the flavor, and there is. People think there's not much to write about, and there is in the story.
Yeah, and there is. And you can always just like pitch Russia against Poland if you just want for some spice for Hikrevo. I don't know the answer, by the way. And that training program, the reason I say both a positive and a negative on the camera and recording stuff, or even the social media stuff, actually, quite frankly, is that firstly, you only got access to that if you were there, because no one was recording it the way that you do now. But secondly, I think over the course of maybe 7 years, we delivered that vodka training program to, I think the number was about over 10,000 bartenders, right? Across all the continents and 25 countries, all of Europe, Scandinavia, Australia, the US. We took this program, right? And I suppose if social media had been a thing then, we would have done really well out of it, because there weren't many people traveling to that extent at that point.
And 10x the number of people that would have seen it as well, right? Yeah.
Totally, right? So we missed out on...
Yeah.
And I'm not actually... I'm pleased I'm not in that.
So is none of it's on camera or filmed?
I don't think so. There will be some stuff somewhere.
Do you think you can still remember how to do it?
I've got the script, yeah, of course. I mean... Yeah,
give the people what they want. I reckon.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure they want it. It was honestly, even now, and this is 15, 16 years later, longer in fact, later, that content was brilliant. Like there is none of it was inaccurate. It's not like, okay, we thought this then and now we think this now. No. I would still happily talk about. I might change some of the drinks, because the drinks were the drinks we were making then and not now, but I wouldn't change a vast majority of that, and certainly nothing to do with the production or the tasting or the provenance or all of the things that made the samples we were giving out different. And funnily enough, I did a tasting just on my own because I was looking through this after we spoke in Edinburgh. I was like, I'm going to just have a look through our old Finlandia stuff just to see what's in there. And I did we called them archetypes, where there were three kind of broad categories of vodka. And it was quite easy to, no matter what you were tasting, if you knew these archetypes, you could put a vodka in one of those, and that helped you narrow it down a bit more, and then you could work into that. And I did the archetype tasting just on my own, probably about 10:30 in the morning. Also, it's when I do most of the tasting like that. And like a lot of stuff, I remember being exceptional at picking those archetypes, right?
So what are the archetypes?
Okay, good question. So one was like clean and neutral.
Okay.
One was like spicy and not aromatic isn't the right word. And then the other one was like heavy and oily.
Yeah.
and you could basically pigeonhole any vodka within one of those three things, right?
Yeah.
And I'd done this so many times, like literally hundreds of times, and I was really good at it. And I did it recently. I was like, fuck, this isn't as easy as I remember it being. And I don't know whether it's me. I think it might be me, maybe. But I also think some of the products have changed. Right? I did this enough, and I've got this really solid.
It's not me, it's you.
A little bit. But this happens, right?
Yeah.
People fuck with stuff.
They do.
Right.
And sometimes intentionally and sometimes unintentionally, these things change, you know?
Correct. And I know I've got this vivid memory of knowing I was really good at, I could always get these three, right? And I struggled. And I was like, I'm sure the differences were more pronounced in some of these things. And I think some of it might be me, some of it might be just a lack of practice, but some of it is possibly slow shift of production.
Sure. I mean, I do think, I think you're right. Like, it's probably all of those. But I think when you're doing something day in, day out, or very, very regularly, as you were with vodka, like you say, you get an insight that is unusual, right? You can get very deep on these things to the point where you're like, there's probably only half a dozen people on the planet who are kind of tasting vodka like this, and as a sort of horizontal comparison. When I was in Mexico last year doing the agave spirits book, I was tasting 20, sometimes 30. I think one day we did 50 agave spirits a day for like 4 weeks. By the end of it, we'd done 500, 600 spirits. Obviously, sensibly, you know.
You got to try research. You can't fake it. If you want to know, you have to try.
Got to try it. And like it got to the end that where and this is only in a 4-week period. There's in over years, like you're describing with vodka. Just in a 4-week period. And obviously, I know agave spirits before I went out there. I tasted a lot of stuff, but this was full, intense immersion. By the end of it, like my palate and my nose was so tuned to different nuances. And I wasn't really necessarily aware of it, but while I was writing tasting notes, I was kind of picking this. And took a load of bottles back home with me, and clearly I like agave spirits. I've been tasting them throughout the year as well, but nowhere near with that level of intensity. And I go to products now, and I find it harder.
It's harder
to find the detail in it, all that sort of precision of the aroma and taste. And I look back at my tasting notes, and I'm like, and obviously tasting notes are a funny thing anyway. They're not necessarily, it's like, I wrote that then, and so it's going to taste the same way now. Well, no, it depends on a lot of factors, like what you have for breakfast and whether you're in a bad mood and all these kind of things, or the set and setting, like with psychedelics. But nevertheless, I felt like I'd lost the edge a little bit on agave spirits that I had during that unique time where I was just getting exposed to so many. So it's probably a little bit of that with you and vodka as well.
I think that's part of our job that we don't necessarily take seriously enough. So like you need to be trying stuff all the time. Like you get rusty. And you don't have to get drunk. This is just like, okay. And I genuinely, I'm telling the truth here. I work in the bar in the daytimes nearly, definitely 4 days a week, usually 5, right? And there isn't a day that goes by where I will not pick something from the bar and just try. And I do it as frequent as I can because I just don't think people do enough of it. And it is a skill, right? And you just get, the more you try, the better you get. And I totally believe you. Like you just, when you're in it and you're just trying stuff all the time, you get better and better at noticing the subtleties and the nuances. And if you don't stop practicing, it gets harder.
Yeah. Plus, it's tasty.
And it's nice, yeah. And I genuinely enjoy these things. Like this isn't like a bad thing for me that we're trying these things at this time of day.
Right.
This is just like, this is what we do for a living. I enjoy it. I want to know what these things taste like. It's important for my work that I know what these things taste like. And if I haven't tried stuff for a long time, I need to try it. So I do it all the time.
You mentioned, you're in the bar 4 days a week. You own a bar, do you?
Yes. Yeah, good question. Yeah, I do.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the bar? I don't know if anyone have heard of it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
So this is a good segue there, because you talked about Finlandia and the vodka stuff.
Yeah.
So tell me about becoming an operator.
Okay, so stopped working for Jonathan in late 2007, and worked with a company called Soul Shakers for a long time, for about 3 or 4 years in an event company. Consultants, opened lots of cool bars. I would say I was a lot less involved in it, but when Mahiki opened and that kind of sharing concept, those like
Yeah, I remember that was a Soul Shakers thing,
it
wasn't
was
it?
a Soul Shakers thing, right?
Yeah.
And that was
Crazy, elaborate punch bowl type thing.
all of it,
Really cool.
and that stuff was so no one had done that,
Yeah,
right?
that's crazy.
And that was
Let's label that slightly, because a lot of people probably won't be aware of it. Just describe some of these serves at Mahiki. Mahiki was basically a tiki nightclub, right?
basically, yeah, and an absolute cash machine.
Yeah.
Like just an unreal business.
Yeah. Where a lot of the kind of celebs would go, royal family kind of thing. Well, not all the royal family, but William and Harry or whatever. But
Yeah. And every serve on the menu had effectively its own piece of serveware, right? So most of this was like bespoke, manufactured from a company called Cheeky Tiki, who were based up in Dawson at the time, and they would draft designs and then make the ceramics. So all of the drinks were unique and brilliant, and at that time that was just like there was another level. Like, you're making stuff to serve.
they were like treasure chests.
The treasure chest was the big one.
Yeah, and was there a volcano one as well?
Yeah, the volcano bowl. Yeah,
You got to imagine this is like an entire sort of group, sort of a punch effectively.
yeah.
But
I mean, there was a lot of
with a lot of theater around it and everything. Yeah.
I mean, it was. Let's not lie. Like, some of it was verging on the crass.
Yeah,
But it was that entry level into like showmanship, nightclubby serve stuff, where you see someone walking across the floor with sparklers, and you're like, oh my god, they've got the thing with sparklers, like that stuff. And I don't necessarily love that, but it was definitely a thing.
Yeah.
And they sold a lot of drinks. So Soul Shakers did that project and helped with the Quo Vadis project when that opened, and worked on and did a lot of really good things. But the problem with some of the consultancy stuff is, there's only a couple of you. When the brands want you to do training, they want you, right? You can't just give it to somebody else, because the expertise lies in Tristan. It doesn't lie in someone that works for Tristan, right?
Yeah.
So you can't just say, I'm going to send somebody else. And at that point, with the way dates line up, with the way people want work delivering, you are basically limited by the number of days that you can do. And if you're not available on a certain day, or you're double booked, or you can't do a day, you miss out. So it was an incredible thing. We got loads of great work. We did loads of brand training stuff. I did some stuff with Campari for a couple of years towards the end of the 2000s, that I loved. But if you're not available, you miss out, right? And that kind of limits how much work you can ever get as a consultant. And we were doing...
It's not very scalable.
It's not scalable. It has zero scalability. And we didn't really have a scalable model. So we were doing a lot of events and festival work. And so we would do Glastonbury and the Big Chill Festival, which was great for lots of reasons, just how to manage volume. So we would do, 450 grand's worth of beverage sales over 2 or 3 days at the Big Chill, and another 120, 200 grand's worth of Glastonbury, thousands of people, 50-meter long bars, loads of bartenders just making cocktails, nothing but cocktails. So we were how to dispense those kind of drinks. So did a bit of that in the meantime, but with it not being scalable, which is like, well, we're just always going to be limited to this. And I got the opportunity to open a pub in 2010 with a couple of friends of mine that had been also people I'd worked with in match bars. So I did that.
This is Hemingway?
Hemingway, yes. Yeah. Good. Well done you. Yeah, that was in Victoria Park.
Yeah, I went a couple of times. It's a great pub.
Yeah, great pub. Really good business. And the Hemingway was in a part of London that is now just so popular. At the time, it was a pub called the Penethorn, and it had these like really unwelcoming, big, tall, you couldn't see through them fences. So like you didn't know what you were walking into. Really intimidating entrance. And it was owned by one of the big pub groups, and they were just like, we need a different operator. And we made a pitch, said, we've worked in all these fancy cocktail bars. Why don't you let's have a pub?
Yeah.
And they did. And so over a little period, I ended up not working with Soul Shakers anymore, and ended up being in this pub. And then we opened another pub in Dalston. and after two and a bit years, found a site in Bethnal Green, which was basically as close to the pubs as we could get, and opened Satans Whiskers, and that was in 2013. So yes, Satans Whiskers is
your bar.
Is the bar that I now own. Yeah. It's taken a long time, but yes.
Yeah, it has. I mean, it's tell me about the sort of trajectory of Satans Whiskers, because it feels like you say, opened in 2013, so it's come up to 12 years old, right?
Yeah,
So that's pretty old.
It is old, yeah.
By bar standards. If you can, I mean, any bar that gets past the 10-year mark, I think, is doing well. By the way, Black Rock's going to be 10 years.
That's amazing. I thought it was older than
We're
that.
going to drag ourselves at the 10-year mark. And of course, it's always been like, since you opened it, it's been, highly regarded in the sort of London scene. But it feels like it's sort of come into its own on an international level in the last 5 years. Really,
that's the right time frame. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what has anything? What was the initial intention with it?
Yeah.
And how has that evolved over that period? And does that in any way correlate to the attention it's now getting globally?
Yeah. Okay. So originally when we opened the pub, there was 5 of us, right? And you get into business with friends because that's what you do, and you're naive a little bit, and you never know how these things are going to work out. And everyone had shared goals. So there's 5 of us that originally opened the first pub. And by the time we opened the second pub, within a short period of time, there was 4. And then within a short period of time after that, for different reasons, there was 3, right? And then the 3 of us hit our stride a little bit and got both the pubs working and opened Satans Whiskers and got that going. And that eventually also didn't end well. But with Satans Whiskers, the goal was we always wanted a cocktail bar. We were cocktail bartenders. Like, we loved bars, but just sometimes you have to take the opportunities that are there first. And the first opportunity was a pub, and the second opportunity was a pub. Have we done well enough out of the first pub that we could do the next one? There is more to it than that, but not worth sharing now.
Yeah, I mean, let me share something instead, just to sort of double click on the business partner thing. And I'm not expecting you to drill down into any sort of further stories, unless you particularly want to, but I think it's worth saying that a lot of people get into business with friends in this industry, colleagues who they work with, and there's a lot of optimism there. You have this assumption that, wow, we're pretty aligned on ideals and standards and what we want to do. There's this space where it's going to be our own place. And, that's how a lot of great bars start, for sure. And many of those bars go on for years and do exceptionally well. But also there's some difficult conversations that end up happening, some challenges to relationships that happen. I think a lot of people underestimate what it means to be a director of a company alongside other directors and shareholders. It's sort of like marriage in a way. You are legally bound to each other in many different respects, and sort of honor bound, and it challenges your friendship. In fact, a lot of the time the friendship often fizzles away.
It does,
because it becomes a business relationship, and one person's pulling their weight, the other one isn't, or 3 isn't, or whatever. And I mean, I've been through this. Luckily, my business partner now, Tom, of, wow, what are we on now? 13 years, 14 years, still partners here at Black Rock, is a great guy. And, we lucked out. We get on well and we work well together. We're aware of each other's skills or lack of skills in different departments, and we sort of balance the workload. But, I've had other business partners in the past who thankfully I'm no longer in business with, and I can't say the same complimentary things about them. So I don't know. Again, I'm not asking you to kind of give me an anecdote or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you agree with me on most of those points. Is there anything else you would say about going into business and what it means?
So out of those 5 people, 2 of them I've probably not spoken to for 8 years, 9 years. One of them I've not spoken to for probably 5 or 6 years, and the other one a couple of years. One of them I still very much like. If we met up tomorrow, we'd get on like a house on fire, no problem. But when you start off, as you say, you're all pushing in that direction. After a little bit, people's priorities change, what they want from life changes, what they want from business changes.
And it could be, you have kids.
Yeah, well,
you know,
totally, 100%.
And it's not like, oh, my priority is I don't really give a shit about this bar anymore. It's like, I've had kids, or my mum's dying, or whatever. There's many different reasons why priorities can shift.
Yeah, these are all definitely things. And friendships that you felt would be unbreakable become strained. So actually, I wouldn't change any of it. Like, I've learned a ton through going through those processes, working out how to separate. Opening businesses is really easy. Untangling them at the end is actually really not easy. It's messy and it's ugly and it's not fun. But learned loads doing that kind of stuff. Learned what I want, what I think is important, how I want to deal with things. I think there are loads of benefits of having business partners. You can share problems, you can deal with things, use other people's skill sets that you don't have, all of that kind of stuff. But also sometimes with having a business partner, there's compromise. And sometimes you're just adamant that that's the right direction. But maybe you can't take it because someone else. So as it's happened, where I am or where the bar is and the structure of it is great. Like, I'm pleased I've ended up where I am, and I wouldn't change any of the other stuff. But getting to that point was sometimes very challenging, very stressful, zero fun, expensive, not things that if you can avoid going through, you should go through.
Yeah, someone was quizzing me the other day about starting a business. It's not actually a hospitality business, it's something entirely different, but with other co-directors. And I was like, I know that this, at the moment you're excited. You're going to follow this plan, you're having beers, you're talking about and everything, and it's great. And that's great. You need that energy.
You do.
But you need to plan right now for when people start exiting, that plan that now, get it in a shareholders agreement. We
didn't have any of that.
Yeah, I know. And it's one of those bits of advice you don't really want to take, because it feels like you're casting a negative light over what is at that time.
Like a prenup.
Yeah, it's kind of like a prenup, yeah. So yeah, it's a challenge, but it's, unfortunately, lawyers always end up getting involved in these.
Yeah,
even if they're successful,
cost you the thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
To just basically put stuff right.
Exactly.
Or you have to be very careful about how you start those things, I think, because they get messier quicker than you think they might.
So what kind of cocktail bar did you want to open when you opened Satans Whiskers?
Exactly the bar that it is what I wanted. There was loads of stuff. So I'd taken, in that Soul Shaker period, I'd kind of I'd left this match bar job, which was the best job, and I knew everybody and everybody knew me, and I was looking after these brilliant bars. And then I kind of with the Soul Shaker stuff, apart from the projects that we worked on, you kind of as a consultant a little bit, you kind of drift into the wilderness. And we opened this pub, and for the first couple of years operating the pubs, we're just running pubs, and people don't really talk about pubs the way they talk about cocktail bars. So from kind of late 2007, early 2008, let's say, to the end of 2012, or even early 2013, kind of in the wilderness of just working in the drinks industry a little bit. I operated a wholesale company for, we were selling fresh produce to cocktail bars, and that was a brilliant business for 3 years. Went from £0 to £1 million within a year in turnover, selling stuff that I'd chosen at a fruit market to sell to cocktail bars because everyone was using fresh produce.
I didn't know that.
It was very stressful. It was a terrible business decision because you basically work through the night 6 nights a week, from midnight till 5 a.m. It was a life killer. It was awesome as a business, but it also wasn't.
Do you think that the fact you're a pub, we're still trying to get to the bit about Satans.
Yeah,
the pub bit is interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think part of the reason for the sort of the consultancy thing is you're now a pub operator, not cocktail bar operator, and it's I don't know, it's Kev's sort of semi-retired at this point. He's now pouring pints. He's sort of left cocktails behind, left vodka behind.
There was lots of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the timing was, for me, as someone who works in this sector, the timing was the worst possible timing, because the bit that I was kind of not in the wilderness, but like I wasn't operating a bar. I wasn't working in a bar. I wasn't making mixed drinks.
Yeah.
We were making, 300 Aperol Spritzers and 300 Bloody Marys a weekend, but we weren't making mixed drinks. And in that period, like when you're a consultant for somebody, it's their business, it's not yours. You're just trying to facilitate something that they want, maybe well, maybe not well. I'm selling produce to bars, which is one thing, but basically for a period I was like Kev, the guy that sells fruit, like legit. There was, and that was just, there was a choice I made, and
like Greg Wallace.
Oh my god, yeah, thanks. That's what a compliment. Thank you very much. Wow. So yeah, I'm drifting away from making drinks, but at that period, that kind of like almost 2010 to like 2013, when we opened the bar, things blew up in a massive way. Like social media started to become a thing. People were writing about bars in a way that they'd never done before, and there was this like wave of superstar-y famous bartenders that were opening things, of which you were definitely one.
Instagram was massive at that point. It was really starting to come in, so everyone was aware of like things that were going on at the moment. It was that sort of transition from like the Metro and Time Out through to Instagram, Facebook, social media. Everything was in it, and it seemed to speed the whole thing up.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. And it like the awareness of things that were happening in bars just seemed to double down. But we were drinking in bars all the time, so we were finishing in the pubs. And Fraser and I, who's my partner, we would going to all of these. I mean, I spent a fair bit of time at Pearl and
Whistling Shop.
The Whistling Shop, 100% just around the corner, and everything that was popular and open at that time that was at that elite level, we were in all of the time. And there was the bar that opened on Hoxton Street that was very famous at the time, and
White Lion,
of course, yes, and Nightjar had opened on Old Street. And we were going, and Artesian was a thing then, but popular, very popular then. And we were going to all these things, and it was just like, in a way, like no one was making classic drinks, and that wasn't a bad thing, because like some of the environments, I'm going to get this mosquito. Some of the environments that these classic drinks were being made in, like, were a little bit boring. It was still braces and tashes and jazz.
There was a lot of that going on.
Too much of it going on, right? And it was a bit dull. Right?
It was a strange time. I mean, obviously, I was right in the middle of it, but it was sort of. It's weird. It was like sort of Milk and Honey Mark II, in a way. And not to say that it wasn't necessarily improved Mark of Milk and Honey, with the sort of the theatre, way more theatre than Milk and Honey, and on a lot of sort of, there was a lot of chef-y things that were coming in to the bars as well. And so it was this strange mashup of kind of retro, but also modern, futuristic, and also slightly circusy. And it was, I mean, looking back now, I think in retrospect, you can sort of see that actually it was a sort of testing ground for new ideas in bars, some of which have carried forward and some haven't. And some of which have carried forward more in other markets, and been sort of, abandoned in this market. I mean, I was not to get us too far off track, I was at Rome Bar Show the other day, and I saw Marianne Becquet, who worked for us at Pearl briefly, and then of course was at Night quite some time, and then Gibson. And he came on board at the time at Pearl when we were doing a lot of this theatrical sort of smoke and
I remember
a little bit of the crazy sort of serviceware kind of thing. Not quite treasure chest at Mahiki, but
But it differs. Very different. Yeah.
And Marianne, he was giving a seminar in Rome, and he had all this apparatus and apparel and the interesting bits of service. Where I was like, wow, and all these guys were turning up to watch it and everything. It's like, this is still a huge thing in for certain bartenders in certain markets. There's sort of like, I'm using, because Marianne's just, it's almost like kleptomania. He got all these different straws and servicewares from collected all over the world to sort of build in these kind of theatrical storytelling kind of serves. It's still a big thing for a lot of bartenders, It feels like London, maybe not so much anymore, I think, probably partly down to the work you're doing with sort of reviving classics and sort of the kind of pure sort of version of cocktails, So yeah, it was an odd time. I guess I'm kind of just defending my
no, not at all. the realities were at that time, like everyone that had influence was talking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
This was there generally were not enough good things that could be said about those kind of bars. Artesian and White Light, they were just like, oh my god, have you been to these places? These places are amazing, right? And Fraser and I were spending a lot of time in these bars because I was like, if everyone's saying this, I'm gonna go again. And someone else the next week, and we would go. We would go all the time. And I'm just like, some of these things are really cool, but a lot of these things they're not only not cool, they're not nice, right? And I just like, I just don't believe that this collection of very influential people are saying these are great things. I was just like, well, I think that classic drinks, well made anyway, are just as good. The problem is that the environment in which a lot of these drinks have been made were a bit boring. I was just like, okay, it was like everyone's doing this and everyone's shouting about this. We're going to try and do this. And that was like, even, I'll be honest with you, even some of the work you were doing, I was just like, we're going to go as far away from that as possible and just focus on the things that we know how to do and try and do them better than we were doing them with Jonathan's company, because we've learned more since then.
Yeah.
And we can design the space in which we want to do it and the equipment that we need to do it. And loads of it was just, okay, everyone's shouting about this. We're going to try and do this, but we're going to try and do it in a different environment where it's not as boring and you don't have to wear braces.
Yeah.
And you can just be relaxed.
So I guess one of the challenges with classics, as I look at it, is that let's take a Martini as an example. You might have heard of it. That we can walk out the door here and we can find many places serving martinis. A lot of them are going to be bad.
Yeah, they are.
They're going to be warm. They're going to be overload diluted.
Yeah.
They're going to be using poor quality ingredients. They're going to be served in dirty glasses, and many different ways in which you can fuck up a martini. So for a lot of consumers, they sort of fall into the trap of thinking, well, I don't like the taste of mojitos that much because they're so inconsistent. I don't like the taste of Manhattans that much because they're too warm. And so when I would think the challenge of opening a bar where you're going to focus heavily on classics, and you don't just do classics, right? I mean,
no, we've become known for that, but we just no one.
But just to stick with the classics for now, because it's certainly one of the things that you're famous for, and certainly what I drink when I come to your bar.
Yeah.
Because I know they're going to be exceptional. Is you have to sort of face up to that consumer sentiment that, oh well, if I want a good cocktail, I need to go to a bar where they're coming up with original cocktails because they've actually put the thought into it. I know that classic cocktails are a thing and sometimes they can be tasty and sometimes they're not, but how can I have an assurance of that? And if they're not being creative with their ingredients, doesn't that just mean that they're relying on old recipe books to make their drinks rather than kind of thinking about new ways to do stuff?
Yeah, no, these are fair assessments of how I think probably the thought process of increasingly now, I think that's the case, of how people operate. Originality is a really key factor in terms of bringing new people to the business. I think with us specifically, what you say is true. A lot of the drinks that we make, you would go to a dozen other bars, possibly more, order the same thing, and it probably not be great. And it would be absolutely understandable for you to think that that isn't a bar problem or a training problem or a bartender problem or an ingredient problem. That's just this isn't a nice thing. And so I'm never going to have that thing again because I've already wasted £100 on shit martinis. I'm not going to spend any more money on shit martinis, for instance. But everything we tried to do, the way that the equipment that we've got access to, or that we put in place, was in response to trying to make sure that we could do those things as faultlessly as possible and as consistently as possible for an entire shift, not just for the first 2 hours when you're quiet, or when you're not capacity, or when your freezer runs out of cold glassware. Like, we designed that space to make sure that the 50 people who are in that room get brilliant things, or as close to we can get to brilliant as we could do. And that wasn't anywhere else that was making classic cocktails, and there were loads of places that were doing it. Everything came with a compromise. So your one freezer that's got 30 pieces of cold glassware in it, if you get a rush, those 30 pieces are expended straight away. And then basically for the next hour, anything that goes in that freezer isn't going to be quite as cold, right? So unless you're one of the first 30, if you're in the second 30, you get something that's not as good as the first 30,
Consistent.
right? And that's not fair or right or cool. So we tried to basically fix all of those problems by just making something look slightly ugly and just sticking 2 massive freezers in that aren't the most beautiful thing, but they allow us to do our job better.
That's a Charlie Munger, you know, Warren Buffett's business partner.
Okay, no.
At Berkshire Hathaway, this was one of his sort of methods or protocols for fixing a business. Instead of like, what do we need to do to make what is good? What do we need to do to make this better? He'd be like, what is the worst version of this? How come if we were gonna fuck this up badly, what would that be? Well, it would be that the first 10 customers get frozen glasses and the next 100 don't.
Yeah.
How do we fix that? So you start by looking at what is the worst possible outcome. I guess the worst outcome is everything's warm.
Everything's warm.
But then from there, it actually becomes a lot easier to find the solution.
Yeah.
Because you already recognize what the problem.
What can go wrong.
Yeah.
And that has been, honestly, Tristan, that's been our approach to everything from day one. So much of the stuff that we knew were problems, like being able to just make even one drink, which being a martini, well and consistently, we weren't able to do it under normal circumstances. Normal circumstances are you've got ice in an ice well at 0 degrees, you've got gin in a speed rail at room temperature 21, 22 degrees, whatever that might be. If you combine those things, it is impossible to make a drink that is either A, cold enough, or B, cold enough that doesn't have too much water. You cannot do it, right? So you have to take steps to intervene. Those things usually rely on plentiful and good quality refrigeration and or freezers. And we knew these were problems before we opened the bar. So we built the bar to correct those problems. Because also the other thing, I think, which is you'll have been in this position, and this is something I talk about in a presentation that I give, but you've been in that position where you are a proud bartending human, right? You want everyone that comes to get a drink from you, you want to give them something, and when they walk away, you want them to be like, that was proper. That's what I expected from Tristan, right? But imagine you have the capacity to deliver that, skills-wise you do, but the equipment that you need to allow you to deliver that isn't there, right? That's no longer a Tristan isn't good enough problem. That's just a Tristan doesn't have the equipment to do his best work.
Yeah.
And that sucks. That's like, I'm good, but I can't give you what you want because I don't have the facilities to make it. And so that was, as a motivation for everything we put in place and is there, it is there because I didn't want you to feel like that. I wanted you to walk in and go, right, if I don't give you something excellent, it's not because I don't have the facilities. It's because I've not done it right. And I wanted to fix that. So all of it, equipment provision for me is as important as anything else. You need to give people the stuff to do their job to the standard that they want to do it to.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that factors into retaining good team members as well, right? When you've got their back, equipment-wise, then they're not going to fuck off somewhere else where it's a different setup.
Yeah, I mean, you need to give everyone. It's so hard to recruit. So once you've got
expensive
and time-consuming.
Yeah.
Once you've got those people, you need to give them every reason to stay. And to me, it's an easy win to make sure they've got the tools, equipment, facilities, plant that they need to do their work. Like, it's not fair to expect someone to deliver at this level, but you're only giving them enough to deliver here.
Yeah. Let me just jump back to what you're saying about drink temperature and dilution. So what you're saying is that if you're making a martini with 0 degree ice and room temp gin, then you're not going to get cold enough or you're going to get too much dilution to get to that.
One of the two. What you'll end up with a halfway between, or you'll end up with a cold drink, but with double the amount of water that should be in that drink.
So you're saying if I get this drink down to say like -8 degrees or whatever,
you won't get it there. You'll get it to like 5 or 6.
You're going to get too much dilution to get there. Correct. An unacceptable amount for what you think a martini should have in it. Yeah. Okay.
The converse is you can have closer, still too much, but you can have closer to the right amount of water. This is the amount of water is subjective. You might like more, I might like
Yeah, I guess that's what I was picking at here. Like,
the amount of water is subjective. You might want more water than I want.
yeah,
The realities are, if you stir a drink to -5 with those
under those
parameters,
yeah.
yes, you're going to add close to 45-50 mils of water to a martini. That is too much water.
Yeah. Is -5 cold enough, do you think?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Most bars will never get near.
And I was going to say, most people haven't even had a -5 martini.
No, most bars. If you're making a drink across the bar at a minute, most bars will never get near minus.
So you have to stir quite a long time to get down to
you do. So to give you a rough example, and again, this is so boring, but depending on the temperature of the room, you can probably spend a minute 30, a minute 40 stirring a drink to get that down to -5,
which no one does.
Which no one does.
No.
And even if you get to that point, and you can do that with a thermometer, just stir until you see it drop. If you get to that point, you've added too much water.
Yeah.
And then if you want to control that,
Depending on how much water you like in your martini.
trust me, that's too much. I'm very confident in saying that is too much. You can control that, but then you're going to end up with a martini that is 0 degrees or 1 degree or 2 degrees. And that is not cold enough.
No. So what's your solution for that?
There are lots of solutions. Batching is one solution because you can control all of it. You measure the water, you measure the ingredients, and you stick it in a freezer at the temperature that you're happy with.
Yeah.
Right? That's the ultimate solution. The problem with that as an ultimate solution is you have no variety. So you can batch your house martini to that and it's perfect. But if anyone wants anything different to that ratio, they're not getting it.
Yeah.
Right. So batching is perfect, but you just need to be able to batch every variety, and then you need freezer space to store it.
Different ratios of vermouth to gin.
And every gin is
just one cocktail.
Correct. Yeah, right. So
I got it.
Did you nail it?
Got it.
Oh, it's danger. Danger.
So this is the mosquito. For anyone just listening, there's a mosquito that is going to die before the end of this podcast. It's just which one of us is going to kill it.
It's closer to you right now. So that's one thing. The best, easiest thing that you can do is to reduce the temperature, the starting temperature of the product that you use to make that martini, right? So room temperature is 20, 21, 22. If you put it in the fridge and you actually start at 4 degrees or 5 degrees, the ice is doing a lot less work, right? So then it helps. If you put it in the freezer and you're starting at -15, -20, then you can get to the point where you can add the right amount of water, but the service temperature is still exceptional.
Yeah, I mean, if you're starting with frozen, and then you got refrigerated vermouth as well, I'd imagine you can work this out, and perhaps you have. But I'd imagine room temperature water just added to that little mixture, it's going to get roughly there, isn't it?
That is so we yes, we have done this. You can literally. So if you weren't looking, right, and I made you one, and whilst your back was turned, I just took gin from the freezer, vermouth from the fridge, let's say chilled water, not room temperature, chilled water, and I literally just lobbed that all in a glass and hand it to you. That is as good as the other thing, because they're the same.
Yeah.
They are the same. But there's no theatre in me doing the latter.
I'm going to intentionally trigger you here. And you avoid bruising the gin.
Oh my word! Yeah. That was a thing for a while, wasn't it? Yeah, that was absolutely a thing. I've never. Yeah.
I mean,
do you think people still talk about this?
I don't know. I mean, if they do, it always seemed ridiculous. Like literally, the first time I ever heard it, it seemed ridiculous.
I'd love to know who started that because they need to.
But it's like, I mean, it's sort of a wonder that, I mean, I've met many people over the years who I would otherwise deem to be smart and intelligent, and they've said it. And I'm like, it's just the power of ridiculous ideas, if they said enough, is quite incredible.
Yeah, that was a big thing for a while. Yeah, don't bruise the gin. I generally don't even know what that means. What does that mean? What does that mean?
I don't know.
Like,
and I would, do you know what? I would love to try side by side the same gin, bruised and
unbruised. Yeah.
I mean, there's a simple test, isn't it?
It is a pretty simple test. I would put a pretty sizable amount of money on you not being able to tell the difference.
I reckon you're probably right. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'd forgotten.
I think
that.
you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm good. but I don't think I'm.
There we go. Yeah, that's testing the difference in a bruised gin is. It is unreal. Some of the things that have cropped up as like reasons as to why drinks might not be as good as they should be.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think bar myths or myth busting is an interesting one. I'm trying to think what else is there that's been sort of said over the years that is totally ridiculous and probably been completely.
Someone will still be teaching it somewhere though. That is these things haven't completely been eradicated.
No.
I come across this relatively not frequently, but enough times a year where I hear people talking about things that are just not. I think actually potentially you and I shared a seminar recently where we heard things that were most likely not true.
Yeah. No, let's not name any names.
No, we shall not. No.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a few things there as well. But sometimes people hear what they want to hear, and they love to have reasons that they can kind of easily adhere themselves to. You know, where it doesn't require too much complex thinking. It's just like, all right, that's that, and that.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens in drink history a lot as well, and brand history too. I mean, brand history probably the classic example because it's so much easier to market a simple story.
Yeah.
Of like, struggling through a difficult period, and then look, oh wow, the sun took it over and now you've got this product and it's incredible, rather than trying to explain something deeply complex and nuanced, as most histories of most brands are.
Yes. Yeah. Or just made up in other instances, which
Plymouth Gin is my favorite of all of those. I can't remember the full details of it, but the story of Plymouth Gin it's not completely untrue. Oh yeah, do you want some whiskey?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's not completely untrue, but the real story is far more interesting, far darker and weirder, and is never really been told properly, apart from in my gym book available in all its scores.
In all good research.
Yeah. But anyway, we won't get into that. Batching. Let's talk about batching.
Yes, batching. Yeah, sure.
Do you batch at Satans Whiskers?
Some things. Yeah. Not very much. It was some for you. Thank you. Not very much.
Thanks.
Things that are overly complex. And where we can rely on the longevity of the batch. So to give you an example, like Singapore Sling is a relatively fiddly drink. So we will batch some of the ingredients for those things. We, like lots of bars, make spicy margaritas or a version thereof. And at periods we make enough of those that it's just beneficial to combine several ingredients first. But in general,
you batch the citrus fruit in those?
No, we do not. No, that would be suicide.
Just checking.
No. No.
Just before people watch this and go, Ken Armstrong's batching an entire margarita in a bottle.
That is definitely not what happens. But the things that are non-perishable and most importantly do not evolve or bleed flavor or change, we batch. Only a handful of drinks that we make enough of, but otherwise, no, we bartend and pick up the things that we need when we need them.
Does it mean it takes more time to make some of these drinks?
Yeah, it's slow. In the grand scheme of things, we could probably dispense drinks quicker than we do, but that is the nature of the way we make our product.
So, is there other situations where you could batch and it wouldn't be in any way cause some negative impact on the flavor of the drink, but you're intentionally not batching because you believe that the construction of the cocktail is important?
Okay, so if we had a fixed menu, which we don't, we could probably batch more, right? So the menu changes every day in the bar. So there's 24 drinks listed on the menu. Some days we'll change 3, sometimes you'll change 10 more, right? So we have a back catalogue now of in excess of 950 drinks that are basically loaded on a couple of iPads, and you can use any one of a combination of any of those 950 drinks to write your menu for that day, right? So lots of those drinks would benefit from batches so long as those batches are not perishable or they don't change. But if you change the menu every day, that would require you having to store batches for too many drinks, right? So with variety, or certainly with menu variety and with people being able to order basically what they want when they come in, batching just isn't a solution because you would just need infinite space. We don't have that. So one of the reasons we don't batch is because the menu changes all the time. But another reason is the problem with batching specific. There are lots of problems in the way I see it, but let's just assume customer facing. The problem with batching is choice and variety, right? So when a drink on a menu is batched, as a customer, that is the drink that you can have, right? You cannot have the same drink made another way. Often the ingredients that go into that thing, the constituent parts, aren't available to make it a la minute because it's just all in a batch. So you like Desi Daru, I like Grey Goose, right? But the batch is made with Grey Goose. So you want to come in and you want to drink your favorite vodka, and you say to me, hey, Kev, can I have that menu drink? But I really like that vodka. My answer is no, right? And that to me instantly is a problem. You stop people from brand calling, you stop people from ordering the things that they really want. And that to me is the opposite of a bar. There are great bars that it doesn't matter. You just get exceptional drinks batched or not. It doesn't matter. But in general, when you walk into a bar, the reason there are 10 gins is because you can pick any one of those 10 gins. It's not so that you have to have the one gin that they make that cocktail with, and then you can have the others in gin and tonics. Like all of these things, you have spent a lifetime deciding which one of those 10 things you like. But then you go to a bar and you want a cocktail with that thing, you can't have it because it's not in the batch. And that I don't know, it feels wrong to me. I don't like it. You should be able to spend your money on whichever brand you choose. And also if you work with commercial partners and another brand company comes in and goes, you know what, we like that drink, we want it with our brand. You can't do it. It's just limiting. It's limiting. It's super quick. It's super efficient. There are loads of positives, and I am vehemently not anti-batching, but there are downsides to producing drinks that way that reduce what you can sell to people or what people's choices are.
I think it's sort of partly a kind of philosophical question about what it is you want your bar to offer. And like the batching's been around for a while, but it certainly seemed to come into effect more when a lot of influence from the kitchen and from chefs started to come in, and we started to see cocktail bars that actually weren't offering classics; they were just offering the menu of drinks that they offer. And I guess the argument was, well, if you come to my Michelin star restaurant, you can't start switching out ingredients on the tasting menu that I'm offering you.
Agreed.
And the whole experience of this bar is that you come here and you experience exactly the drinks that we want you to experience, with no modifications allowed, barring, I guess, sort of very specific dietary or allergies or something like that, and maybe you make some changes for that. But and that is one way of experience a cocktail bar.
I agree.
And there is something in that, this sort of. I remember I went to a bar in Tokyo called Gen Yamamoto. I think that was actually his name. It was a really weird bar, too brightly lit. It was simply one counter. I mean, a lot of bars there are very small, but one L-shaped counter, room for 6 people. You paid equivalent of like £50, and you went in there and you just got a tasting menu of cocktails exactly as he wanted to serve them. No modification, nothing. He barely spoke to you as well, although obviously I don't speak Japanese, so that might be part of the problem. I was with a Japanese guy though, but that was almost sort of the I guess the most extreme version of this. Like, you come here, you sit through this thing, this is how we want you to taste it. Music and vibes and all that sort of thing as well, but when it comes to the drinks, this is how it works, and there's only 10 of them or whatever. But you do have to ask yourself, like, what's special about cocktail bars in the first place? Well, it's kind of the customizability, right?
It is, yeah.
There are all these fucking bottles, right? And all these different cocktails. I mean, not even billions, not even trillions, probably quadrillions of different drink combinations that a good cocktail bar can make you if you go through every single cocktail and every single spirit, vermouth, modifier, combination, or brand that you can think of. That's incredible. It's magical. It's maths, right? It's just remarkable that all these drinks can be made in all these different ways, and at any time you can ask the bartender to make it and they can do it for you. And so that's a completely different approach, I think, in a way. I mean, it really is. Like, they're both called cocktail bars, but actually they're completely different places.
Yeah, they are.
You know? And no, I mean, I think there's room for both of them, but I love your approach to it. I love this idea that actually a guest can come in and they can choose their gin or their whiskey, and it can be made, and it will be made expertly. And not only that, but probably, oh, right, they picked a peaty whiskey. Right, maybe I just need to adjust the ratio of this ingredient and that to make sure that this actually works, you know? And that's skill.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. Like, there are places where, and you know what you're getting yourself into. You go to certain bars and you know that that's the experience, right? But some people walk into bars without knowing what they've subscribed to or what they're going to get, right? And they just want something simple, or they're not comfortable paying 25, 30 euros for a cocktail where they don't recognize the ingredients, they don't know what it will taste like, because it's not an insignificant amount of money and the risk is high. You would never order a meal for an equivalent amount knowing that you're not going to order steak if you don't like steak, right? And there's a jeopardy almost in ordering certain drinks where you're like, okay, this could be good, but also it might not be good, and I also don't necessarily know what it is, and I don't know how it's going to come. So classics are like a safety net. They're like this default, okay, right, well, I don't recognize this and I don't know that, so I'm just going to have that drink because I know that drink. And then I know that drink and I also like that product. So that's what I want to order. And there is, in food and drinks, and we've brought them together in a way that they don't necessarily align. But food and drinks, different, right? It's different. You choose a restaurant usually based on the style of food, right? But drinking is way more, there's more spontaneity, there is more choice. You don't walk up to a kitchen and just see the 10 different pasta shapes and go, I want it without. It's something you do actually, but in general you don't. Like, drinking is just different. The mechanisms are different. The immediacy is different. Kitchens take time to prepare food. Bars can do it quickly. Like, with that comes your ability to make those choices.
Yeah.
And it isn't just about even spirits or your favorite product. This is about sharpness. It's about sweetness. It's about your choice of sweetener. It's everything. It's like, okay, I like spicy margaritas, but I don't like them that spicy. Can I have less of the spicy, right? Yes, you can have less of the spicy. Do you know what? I want to consume less sugar. Can you put less sugar in it? Yes, I can do that for you. When it's batched, the answer is always no. You set that precedent, right? The recipe that you're serving is the one that you've decided you want to serve. If somebody in the house decides, actually, I'd like it with a bit more sour, or I'd like it with a bit more sweet, you don't add another pinch of citric acid to make it more sour. It just doesn't happen, right? You just reduce what people can have, and drinking is more fun than that, I think.
Yes. Why do orange juice cocktails taste bad?
Why don't they? They don't.
We had this conversation. It started this conversation, I think, at least in Edinburgh. And I think I don't know. We got somewhere. I think you convinced me in. Well, let's just have it again.
Yeah.
So I mean, let me just elaborate a little bit. I and Jay Boger and I have long had this conversation. Pretty much all orange juice cocktails taste bad.
Yeah, you're both wrong. You're both wrong.
So fight me then.
Confused. It's not wrong. You're confused, right? So, Naren Young, I loved him. He's awesome, right?
Yeah, okay. We're going to make the Garibaldi, we're going to make a slight exception.
Yeah, we will, right? So, but I remember, and I can't remember when, this could be like any time between like 2009 and 2013 or 14. I remember reading something, and I'm pretty sure it was Naren's name on it, where he basically said the same thing. He's like, basically, orange juice cocktails suck. The irony being, obviously, that he then
made the Garibaldi really famous.
Yeah. But I suppose he did something unique with the orange juice, which helped, right? So, and I remember thinking at the time, I was just like, "You're wrong, right? This is wrong." And loads of people hate orange juice, right? When you get up in the morning, I actually, preferably if I've got a choice, I'll have grapefruit or juice for breakfast rather than orange juice, right? But basically, if you get up and someone gives you a cold glass of freshly squeezed orange juice. There are very few better ways to start a day with a good coffee than that, right?
Yeah, totally. But the point is, it's not been mixed with booze.
No, agreed. I'm getting there. Okay. Brutal. Orange juice is awesome, right? Good oranges are delicious. And I have heard this so many times now whereby everyone's just like, orange juice cocktails suck. And this is a bit like, I've been vegetarian for like 30 years now. And for a long time, like, vegetables are nice, but for a long time, there was only ever like one veggie option on a menu. It was probably like a mushroom risotto or something. Right. But that if you are a really good chef, you can do loads of great things with vegetables, right? But everyone's just like, oh, it's too difficult, or it's too complex, so we're just going to do the thing, or we're just not going to do anything at all, right? And a little bit, it's a tenuous analogy, but a little bit, orange juice is a bit like that. It's like, okay, well, it requires a bit more work to come up with something good, or it's not working as a default ingredient in this thing, so maybe it just doesn't work at all, right? And so you just kind of stop at that point. And there are a range of orange juice drinks. So, like, let's say, there are more good orange juice drinks than bad ones, right? So, Blood and Sand, shamefully, Satan's Whiskers, and Orange Blossom, the Bronx, regular or
The poster child of bad orange juice cocktails.
Right. The reality is that these are they're bad orange juice drinks, right? They don't work. You make those drinks to a Savoy spec,
To those specs, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they basically don't taste great.
Mm.
They're flat. They lack body. They're over dilute.
They always feel over dilute.
They do, right? But
Yeah.
there's a reason for this. There is a reason, right? They're just not good drinks. The specs are fundamentally flawed, right? But there are way more good orange juice drinks, right? So like Golden Cadillac or Golden Dream or Hurricane or Fog Cutter or Scorpion or Painkiller or I don't know. There's more. There's loads of drinks that orange juice works brilliantly.
Plays better with rum, I would say, than most.
It does work well with rum. Yeah. But the difference is that most people aren't making those drinks. The ones that I've just named, people don't tend to make them.
No.
But they do make Bronxes, and they do make Blood and Sands, and they're always crap. And they're just like, well, I know Scotch is nice, I know Vermouth is nice, or I know gin is nice. These drinks aren't working, so the problem must be the orange juice, right? The problem isn't the orange juice at all. It's just the structure of the drink.
Mm.
Orange juice lacks a bit of acidity, as it doesn't give that structure the way that citrus does. But also, all of these drinks have vermouth in common, right? So you're basically shaking a little bit of gin, then a low ABV vermouth, which kind of also sometimes doubles down as your sweetener, but not in the way that a simple syrup would. And then you're making it with orange juice, which doesn't have the acidity of lemon or lime. So you've got like an undersweet modifier.
Because you're not putting sugar syrup in
You're
there.
not. There's no additional sweet and sour mixing.
You might have a liqueur in some of these.
Maybe.
Yeah. But,
Right. So you're then shaking. So if you've ever shaken you will have done because you've probably watched enough James Bond. You shake a gin martini with 60 gin, 20 vermouth, or 70 gin, 10 vermouth. What happens? It's washed out, right? There's no orange juice in that, but you're experiencing the exact same thing as you're experiencing a Blood and Sand or a Satan's Whiskers. There's no backbone to the drink, right? So there's not enough acidity, there's not enough sweetness. There's a low ABV modifier, and there's just a lot of water content. And then you double down on that water content once you've shaken it. So you just end up with these backboneless, flabby, washed out drinks. And the assumption is it's just the orange juice. It's not the orange juice. It's the lack of the other things that's the problem. And if you modify that in all of these other drinks with some citrus and with some sweetness, or with lots of other things, you can make exceptional orange juice drinks.
So what you're saying is that orange juice can be good as long as you go the extra step with it.
As long as you know how to deal with it, yeah.
Yeah. It still doesn't really seem to be selling it as an ingredient that well.
No, you have to work a bit harder.
Yeah.
Of course you do. But that, like, life isn't just...
In general, you're saying it basically needs some lemon or lime plus some sugar to go with it.
It needs some support, yes. But as a lengthening ingredient in a drink, it is very, very
Yeah,
good.
because a lot of the ones you listed that are good, they've actually got quite a lot of orange juice in.
Yeah, they most certainly do.
Yeah,
they most.
Which I
certainly
guess also is probably maybe another trick for using it. It's these ones, like you say, with Blood and Sand and Bronx, where it's like 25 ml of orange juice or somewhere.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is this? What function is this thing?
There's not enough. I mean, there's a great drink called a Valencia, which is apricot brandy, fresh orange juice, and you shake that and you top it with champagne, and it is, in my opinion, it is a superb drink.
Yeah,
I genuinely like that drink, and we had something on the menu at the Player, 2006, 2005, called the Apple Jackrabbit, and it's an apple brandy based drink with orange juice, maple syrup, and lemon, and it is just awesome, right? But because you're backing that orange juice up with a bit of citrus and some proper sweetener, you can integrate orange juice into drinks without any issues whatsoever. You just need to be conscious of how you do it, and the default is that most people just go, actually, I've made a Bronx. The Bronx is shit. It's the orange juice fault.
All right, cool. I think I don't know if you've won that one or not, really.
Yeah, I can't see you listing any more orange juice things. What I am confident in is if I were allowed to make you some drinks at some point,
You still got.
I could make, and I'm going to have some. I could make you some very good orange juice drinks, is what I would suggest.
Yeah, I mean, you are right. It's actually, once you kind of start talking about the ones with lots of orange juice in. I mean, I had a mimosa the other morning as Father's Day.
Nice, right?
And that's a freaking great drink.
It's a nice drink.
And it's pretty much half and half champagne and orange juice. And when the orange juice is good, it's delicious.
Yeah, that's that, and you have to be aware of that. You know, we buy in oranges. Sometimes the juice is crap, and so we just don't make orange juice drink.
Yeah. You find you'd get crap juice out of fresh orange juice.
Of course you do. Yeah, you absolutely do. Yeah.
Just not the right sweet sour balance kind of thing.
Yeah. And Daru, you said, I mean, I'm sure you won't mind either, but Daru said, they would make tons of orange juice drinks, and he would sweeten his orange juice. So if he'd juiced 10 liters of fresh orange juice for service, the Rainbow Room, add some simple syrup if it does not taste sweet enough. You can correct these things because that's what you do for a living. Salt and pepper, it's simple syrup.
Sour and sweet.
Yeah, of course
right?
you can, yeah. Until it's nice.
Yeah.
It's not cheating.
Would you throw a load of citric acid and malic acid and a special blend in there? Is that the way you go down it? What do you think about these substitute souring agents?
What I like is that they're cheap. On an acidity level, they do the job. Acidity is acidity. You can recreate it in the right proportions to make something have the right feel. Feel is not the same as taste. And to date, and I am happy to be proved wrong, and I hope someone eventually will, but today there is no citric malic combination of any of the acids as a solution that recreates the taste of good quality fresh lemon and lime juice. That's it. I don't have a problem with any of it. I love the fact that you can make good drinks without needing fresh ingredients. That's awesome. But there is something missing that is not the same.
Do you think citrus fruit are a kind of dying breed from a lot of the top cocktail bars?
It's labor intensive. It's a pain to process. You've got to store it well.
Orange juice tastes shit in cocktails.
So what's the point anyway? You've got to juice it. There's
the sustainability.
There's sustainability.
Although I hadn't actually looked into exactly how environmentally friendly the production of citric acid.
No, nor have I.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure someone will have done.
Yeah.
But all of those things are factors, and obviously, you'll know, things with particulate matter or texture like lemon or lime juice isn't great for lots of styles of drinks. If you want to carbonate, it's not great.
Yep.
And it makes sense for shelf life and loads of other reasons why you would use acids but you can absolutely pinpoint from a mile away a drink that contains too much or even citric acid. It just tastes different.
Yes. Yeah. And
not
it's
good.
sort of a similar thing to sweeteners, I suppose.
100%.
That just feels like there's a hollowness there, right?
Yeah. They kind of are doing the same thing, but they're not the same thing. And ultimately, in isolation, you might be like, okay, this is nice. But the minute you put that next to something that is made with real sugar and or real citrus, no.
Well, and also, a mistake that I see so often, and I've seen it within our own teams in the past, and I think it happens so commonly amongst many bars, is when drinks are being developed for a menu, it's one sip, it's a straw. Yeah, I think we nailed it, guys.
Yeah,
fantastic. That tastes pretty good now. Try drinking the whole fucking thing.
Yes.
Like every single one of your customers is going to be doing when they buy this drink, and hopefully ordering another one if it's tasty.
Yeah, I mean, that's our barometer, is like, does it taste good? Would you finish it? Would you order another one? Like, if a drink doesn't do those three things, because you're right, what tastes good in a sip isn't your experience. Like, you've got to drink it all.
Yeah.
And if you drink it all, you're like, I definitely wouldn't have another one of them. Then maybe you should think again.
Yeah, exactly. And I know you've been kind of you wrote a piece for Class magazine about all drinks beginning to look the same and indeed taste the same.
Yeah.
And I think that this is another sort of symptom of the apparent shift towards using a lot of citrus alternatives, i.e. acids in their pure form, in bars. I was in Paris recently, and I'd read your article some months before, but or weeks before actually. I don't think it's that old, that article you wrote, is it?
It's December maybe.
Yeah,
possibly,
December. And I was getting served cocktails in a rocks glass that's very, very thin, with a large chunk of ice in it. The liquid was either completely clear or very nearly clear.
Yeah.
And what I found was quite interesting about it was that I didn't have I had no expectation about what the drink was going to taste like. Obviously, it had been ordered off a menu, so I had some idea what the ingredients was. But it's like, is this going to be sour? Is it going to be watery? Is it going to be spirit forward? And all the normal sort of clues for that,
right?
An opacity, a foam on top, the type of ice that's been used in the cocktail, the length of the glass. They weren't there. And so you're like, here we go. And then you sip it and you're like, oh yes, it's got this sort of underlying slight acidity to it that's not really acidity but kind of is, or it is acidity but it's not the complete picture of acidity. It's got some balanced sweetness. It's got, there's a little bit of sort of mezcal smokiness in there, and some other spirity things. Maybe they put some vermouth in there that probably isn't vermouth. They just made something that tastes a bit like vermouth.
Right.
So anyway, I've kind of like laid out your argument for you, but I mean, what else do you have to add to this? And what's
I think a lot of this stuff is a byproduct of just the way that the drinks are made, right? So, if you use fresh ingredients, there is this kind of like particulate matter. It froths up, and you shake a drink, you add texture. There are certain stirred drinks that, like the Martini, where they have a weight to them or a temperature that makes them noticeably different. And then you've got carbonated drinks that also, they're fun whilst they're fizzy, or there might be a texture too, along with the carbonation. In a Ramos, there's weight, right? Or there's like, there's noticeable fruit, or there's loads of things that make lots of the drinks that we make every day instantly recognizable as those things, right? And whether it's temperature or whether it's texture or whatever it is. And all of those factors are just completely removed from that particular style. The drink is always flat. There's no texture. There's no color. There are no obvious cues as to what it is that you might get, right? And maybe it's psychological. Maybe you're just messing with us a little bit. But the manufacturing process dictates how that drink will come out. And so because of the speed at which, if everything's pre-made and it's flat and it doesn't need to be super cold, right, and it doesn't need to be carbonated, it is the quickest, easiest way to make a drink, right, without a doubt. And I've done it at events, and it's not a bad thing. You can still make great drinks doing this stuff, right? But it just all of the other bits are removed. So if I just want to serve a drink quickly, right, the best thing is I can just take a glass out of the freezer that's already got an ice cube in it, and I just pour over some milk till it's the right amount. I just give it to you. Right? I don't need to work. I don't need to shake it. I don't need to worry about if it's not -5 like a martini. I don't need to worry about if it's fizzy and the soda that I've just used or the prosecco I've topped it with is fizzy. It's going to be always
Balanced.
It's just easy. It's easy, and I don't have to work. Right, and I could serve 100 of them in probably 20 minutes because I just got to get the glasses out and pour and hand them out, right? And I think this kind of like desire to just do things quickly and easily has driven a bit of this, because bartending is hard work, right? If you've got to graft and you've got a lot of drinks to make and you've got to shake a lot of drinks and you've got to worry about how cold something is or how fizzy something is, you've got to think about and engage, and you've got to do things in the right way, in the right order, to get people the drinks that they're paying for in the right state. And this is like a default easy way.
It feels like, to me, that bartenders have sort of become drinks manufacturers in a way.
Exactly what they become, yeah.
It's less about the sort of a la minute service and more about the prep and bottling things up and effectively creating a product.
Yes.
Rather than a cocktail.
Yeah.
That can be stored in the fridge, cracked open, poured out, consistent every single time. And I do think there's other benefits to sort of batching and speed of service that we've not really talked about, like the way in which it gives you more time to interact with the guest.
Yes, I've got something to say about that.
Okay.
Actually. Yeah.
I mean, so, okay, let's, if I continue with my point and then you can argue against it. So, if you've got, if you're busy mixing and shaking cocktails, sometimes some of that can be a little bit antisocial. It's noisy, it's moving around the bar quite a lot. It's that little bit harder. I think in an ideal world, that ability to sort of pour quickly and dispense fast should, in theory, give a little bit more opportunity to actually engage and talk to a guest. If you're freeing up that time, of course, if you're employing like half the amount of people because you've got this such rate of service, then that sort of negates that.
Yeah.
But so what's your take on it? You don't think that's the reality of it?
I don't. I've heard this argument a lot, and there've been a couple of bars that have opened in the last decade or so that have basically made this point about we can do things quickly, so we spend more time talking.
Yeah.
I've been to lots of those bars, and my experience with them versus any other bar doesn't feel different. I don't feel like I'm getting more time. In fact, arguably, I get more or as much when I'm just making a normal drink. Like you still have to interact with them. But then there's the second assumption, which is that people actually want that.
Yeah, true.
Right. And I sometimes, and you'll not be the same, you want to go into a bar and you want to talk to a bartender.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want to go in and you want to get your head down. Yeah. You don't fucking talk to anyone. Right. And the assumption is not that I want to spend more time if my product comes quicker. I'll give you a really good example, right? So and it's a brutal analogy, but it's a fair one, I think. In some respects, some of the ways in which we make drinks is akin to a McDonald's, right? There is one person in the back who makes the Big Macs, right? That's the skilled person. They are assembling the Big Macs. But everyone out front, they just grab a Big Mac and hand it over to you, right? My question to you is, you get a Big Mac really quickly. Do you want to spend more time talking to the person who's giving you that Big Mac? No, you don't. No, right? You just want your Big Mac.
I want to talk to the guy in the kitchen.
You do, yeah. You probably do, right? Or you want to talk to your pals.
Yeah.
Right? You want to interact with the people who you're at the bar for.
Yeah, but
right?
I think you're right, and I think this is one of the sort of great assumptions that, and perhaps sort of plays into the sort of hubris of cocktail bartenders these days, where it's like, I'm creating magic here. I'm sourcing these ridiculous ingredients, most of which you've never heard of, and the language of the menu is reflective of that, because half of the stuff on this menu you don't know what it is, and so that's going to inspire conversation because you need to find out what this is, and because I've batched it, I can serve it super fast. That I guess is the great danger, and we are in that era, aren't we, of kind of what would you say, the language of menus being provocative, right? Requiring questions being asked.
Yeah.
I remember when I worked at Jamie Oliver at 15, they insisted on doing the one in Cornwall. I started the bar there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
They did nearly the whole menu in Italian, basically.
Mm.
And you see that quite a lot now, especially in
Yep.
Italian restaurants, right? But for a sort of British chef to do that, it was quite weird. And obviously the intention was like, oh, so what's verdura misto or whatever, you know, and you have to ask the question, and then that gives a chance to say, well, actually, we get the vegetables from here, etc., etc. You can kind of see there's something in that, right? There's sort of inviting someone to engage a little bit. But there is a line, I think, that gets crossed oftentimes where it's just bamboozling people with words and stuff. And it's like Emperor's New Clothes. Like, this must be cool because I don't have a fucking clue what it is.
Yeah. And sometimes you just want to drink, Tristan.
Yes.
Like, I don't actually want, like, as an adult, there are certain times that you go as into a bar or a restaurant and you read down and go, oh, actually, I don't know what that is. I'm going to ask, right? But really what I prefer is I just read down and go, that sounds awesome. That's what I want, right? And loads of people don't like interaction. They don't want to talk to you or me. They just want to order, get fed, have a nice time, get a drink and leave, right? That's a lot of what people want. Or we haven't seen each other for ages. I just want to talk to you. Like, and we just need to be aware that sometimes we're just there to facilitate that how good a night you and I have because we've not seen each other for ages. We're not there to be like, look at how awesome we are. Let me tell you about it. And in some places that's cool, and in other places it's too much. But as long as we're aware of it, I think that's the right approach. But I do not believe that advocating that because we batch something, we get to spend more time with you. Like, the implication then is that if I don't batch, that I'm less good at serving you. That is just not the case.
Yeah.
Like, it is not the case at all.
Yeah. And I mean, this maybe is where Satans and what you're doing with a more classic approach comes in, because in a way it's sort of the antidote to this, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like, I mean, you know, I'm sure you're a lot like me and many of my friends in the hospitality industry. When we go out together, whatever the cocktail bars we go to, we tend to order Manhattans and martinis and beers and shots and that kind of.
They're nice.
Yes, they're really, really tasty.
Yeah.
And we don't have to think too much about the menu, and we don't have to be slightly embarrassed when we don't like the drink that's on your menu. But we know you're kind of probably capable of making a good Manhattan, so let's have that instead. But I guess this is in a way like what you're doing at Satans is saying, look, these are freaking great drinks. We know how to make them well. We can manufacture them for you in the way that you want to have them. We're going to get a great setting for you as well. Trust us, this is going to be awesome. That
is, it's not complicated. It's not high concept. It's not difficult. You can walk in as an everyman and you'll know what we're trying to do, and you might not love it, and loads of people don't love it. But fundamentally, we just try and make as many people as possible, give them access to things that have been around for 200 years, and we just try to serve that thing as well as possible. And I think we do a good job of it. Like, it's not more complicated than that. And it's by brilliant people. Like, the people who do that work in that bar are exceptional. There is no better group of people that I know of that I would rather have to serve you that product. I genuinely, like, this a big thing for me, and they do good work.
That's great. How do you, I mean, I think you've already covered the answer to this question, and I asked it about an hour ago and we didn't quite get to it, but the last 5 years, it seems like the spotlight has been shone on you a hell of a lot more, and that means it's taken about 8 years to get there.
It has, yeah.
So what do you attribute that to?
Things are cyclical. And maybe like Milk and Honey won Best Bar 2. Yeah, it won the first 2 World's 50 Best, and I think it won some stuff before that, right? And that's just a great bar that was doing things to an exceptional standard that no one else had done for 4 years, and it was just making great drinks, right? And things evolved to the stuff that, forgive me, that you were doing and that other bars in that the following generation did. And then they've evolved again to, there's a bit in between that stuff like Marion did at Nightjar, and complexity and everything was different. And to Artesian and expensive, unique glassware and so on and so forth, to the point we're at now where things are minimalist and simplistic and like things evolve all of the time. But classics have stayed kind of, everyone likes them. Like they're not less popular, they're not more popular, they're really good things that taste nice, right? And as far as I'm concerned, you're right, over the last 5 years, we have found ourselves in a really brilliant and unique position. Like, when I got into bartending, there was like industry awards, it was like the class awards and Imbibe and Theme or whatever.
Theme.
God, and yeah, it was a good magazine. There were industry specific awards, but there was no global. There was no Tales. There was no 50 Best. There was none of that stuff. Right? You didn't get into bartending because you wanted to win an award, right? It wasn't a thing. You did it because you liked it, or you liked the lifestyle.
Even in those early years of the awards, like you say in the noughties, no one was setting out to try and win those awards.
Never.
It's just like, oh fuck, we won an award.
We've won something. Yeah. We've been good enough. Someone's thought we're good. Cool, right? That's just the reality bit. But with Satans Whiskers, with the last 5 years, you are right. Our trajectory has changed massively in a way that I never foresaw, in a way that obviously I'm incredibly grateful for. But secondly, it was never a motivation for why the bar was there, right? That was not on my radar at all. Jonathan had mopped up every award that you could possibly win as a bar operator, and I'd worked for him in that period and contributed in a small way to that. But that felt like that was his world. That was never my world. I was just a cog in that thing. And Satans Whiskers was never designed to be an award-winning bar. Like, it was just a bar that we knew we were going to make some really good drinks with people who knew what they're talking about and could do it. That was it.
But it's funny that isn't the blueprint for an award-winning bar, is it?
No, it's not. It's the opposite of the blueprint for what we've never, in 13 years nearly, we've never spent £1 on marketing or PR. Not a pound. And it's, in my opinion, right, and the business has evolved unequivocally, and it's got better and it's got stronger, and we do things that we didn't do when we opened. But in my opinion, the level of detail that goes into how we make drinks is the same now as when we opened, right? There's no difference. The difference is that when we opened in 2013 to pre-COVID, everyone was focused on what bars like the Artesian were doing, because social media was a thing. People were shouting about it. They had famous bartenders heading up the programs, right? Everyone was just looking at that, right? We were just there making nice drinks for very little money, consistently. And that isn't the blueprint. The blueprint for a famous bar is, look at how awesome we are. Look at the cool stuff we're doing. Look at what the ingredients we use. Look at who's come up with the drinks. Shout about it. That's the blueprint for an award-winning bar. And we are as far away from that as any bar could be, unless you're like a pub on the corner.
Yeah. But so, question for you is, now that you've had a great deal of sort of validation about what you've done there in the recent years, it's a little bit like, the guy's been busking on the street. I'm not saying that saying it's a busker, but I'm really not saying that. But the analogy is not perfect. I'm just coming up with it now. But you've been busking on the street.
So Greg Wallace in there, but this is
real insult coming in.
This is sweet. Yeah, I rate it.
You've been a high-end, pub performer, gig performer at the weekends, right? Everyone knows you're great. Okay, bit kind of niche and underground, not niche, but like, cult underground. Why has he not got a record deal? This again, it's not a great analogy. And then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but very quickly, or at least not sort of very slowly and gradually, this becomes one of the world's best bars, right? You've got the record deal, just to continue the shitty analogy that I started, and you've got that validation. So the question is, finally, how does that change you? Or does it change you? Or are you conscious of it changing you?
how I feel about it is that the way I want to run the business and how I run the business and the way that I do it and the things that matter to me, they have not changed, right? Obviously, I'm aware of it, right? Some of the things on a financial level to the number of people we get through the door, some of these things have genuinely changed the trajectory of my life and the business and the things that we do and the things that I get opportunities to do, right? And the business only is responsible for that. But only in the last couple of years, to give you an example, really have my name and the business become synonymous. Prior to, let's say, 2020, 2021, it was still my business, right? And we still did the same things to the same level with the same intensity or the way that we tried to run it. But nobody cared.
Yeah.
Because the focus was elsewhere. And
now you're on the Curious Bartender podcast.
now I'm on the Curious Bartender podcast. Yeah. I mean, I've literally topped out. Yeah, look, I don't feel like how I think about what I do for a living or how I run that business or how I run the bar is any different.
Yeah.
I just want to do brilliant things for people who step into that space and have them leave thinking that was great and I didn't get ripped off and it was tasty and everyone that served me was fucking brilliant. And we don't please everybody, but most people, I think, leave thinking that. And that's the only thing that bothers me.
Yeah. I mean, it's the reason for the question, because I would imagine, and I think this is true because I've seen it happen in other bars. They get thrown into the limelight. They get some success. Maybe they appear on the top 50 or top 100 bars in the world list, and they're like, oh wow, like we're a contender here now. You know, like, oh, what are those guys doing? What are the guys either side of us doing? And what are the people at the top doing? Okay, so we maybe like shift our focus a little bit to that and everything. And it's you know, I know you and I know that you have a sort of pretty strict sort of value system and you're very protective of what you're doing and you believe in what you're doing. So I don't in any way doubt that it's going to the fame is going to change you. But I think it's worth sort of emphasizing how easily this does happen to some venues. And they suddenly become a sort of product of the award system rather than of what it is to actually be a hospitality venue.
So I think firstly, the fact that you and I have been doing it for the length of time that we have gives us some perspective on that, right? So we didn't start doing this work because of any of those factors, right? They came along after we'd already started.
Yeah.
And the level of exposure you get if you're in that collective is mega, right? It's mega. There's additional work, there's additional revenue, there's all of those kind of upsides, right? But the bar was never opened to accomplish that. It just wasn't. And I don't want to open a bar ever where the motivation is I've got to open a business that is, and people are opening bars with only that motivation to just to be to give so that,
sometimes achieving their objective as well.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
But some like a genuine thing on a budget now for a bar opening is the value you attribute to marketing and PR, right? It is. There was not a single line in our P&L or our budget that was marketing PR. It wasn't zero.
Sounds familiar.
There was no, right. There was no line in the budget because you don't spend money on those things. I'd rather spend the money on an extra staff member to make it better when we're open.
Yeah.
But probably one of the first.
It's your public relations.
It is. It is. One of the first things I think probably on a budget for most bars that open now is not only the amount of money, but which PR and marketing agency we recruit to give us the most exposure.
Yeah.
Right. And because in some instances, the reality is those who shout the loudest a little bit get there. And everyone's fighting for that little bit to be in that select group of bars.
Yeah.
And that's not why I do it. I don't think it's why you do it.
No, it's not. No, I mean, those things, the accolades are always nice when
They're amazing. They're amazing.
But I mean, and to be honest with you, I think it's so hard running bars these days that if your mind is on anything other than that sort of bottom line and on the quality of the product you're serving, ensuring your teams are happy and trained and engaged and invested in the business, ensuring that there's not fucking light fittings falling off the wall.
Yeah.
If there is in here at the moment, I think. And all the various other factors. I don't know how anyone would have the bandwidth to be thinking, right, got to have in the back of my mind, you know, how we're going to market to this potential judge and this panel, or get this bartender on a guest shift because they're influential in that market, etc. All the, I mean, I don't even know, like all the cogs and wheels that you need to turn, and
it's crazy.
Yeah.
There are people who I know that own bars that it feels to me like they are never in their bars because all they're doing is promoting their bars everywhere that isn't in the place that they need to
pop-ups and guest shifts and things.
And I just generally I would not feel good or comfortable or any of the above going anywhere unless I knew that stuff at home was the way it needed to be. Like, I don't see how you can be out of your bar for 20 weeks of the year and your bar still, unless you've got exceptional management. But if you're like independently owned, owner-operated spaces, I don't know how you can be somewhere for 20 weeks of the year and your business still be as good as it should be.
Yeah.
Maybe you can.
Well, it's not.
I can't.
It won't be as good as it could be, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Assuming you are in any way a decent operator in the first place, maybe you're better off out of the...
No, these things are totally possible, but that is kind of how I feel about it. Is that's the thing that pays the bills. It pays the team. It pays your rent, your mortgage. Like, if the bar doesn't work, I could be everywhere, but if the bar's losing money, that's no good.
Yeah. So I know you're really proud of your team, and you've done an amazing job with the Satans, and I can imagine there is an incredible training program in place there. I'd like to hear a bit about that, but also reflect on the training program at the Match Bar Group, which you designed. And I actually had a flick through. I say flick through because it would have taken probably a day or two to read the whole thing.
Read the manual.
Yeah, it's a book. It's at 240 odd pages, I think.
Yeah.
And this was the one I was reading was 2008. It was
yes.
Yeah.
So I left it late 2007, and I think I hadn't completely severed my ties. I think I did a little bit of editing or changing of that. So that would be about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a treatise on hospitality, on bar service skills, on technical skills, on spirit knowledge, on cocktail knowledge, on really the sort of philosophy. I mean, it's got quotes from like Dale DeGroff. It's got quotes from JD in there. Looks really beautifully well put together. Very slim on the photography side of things. But so a proper textbook.
But you needed to pay someone to come with a proper camera.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it with
No, you couldn't. Right? No. So, a hell of a lot of work put into it, clearly. What did that mean to you at the time, and what leading up to that, and how have you taken that further? And we should talk about your book as well, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So the Match Bar manual was a task I was set in like maybe late 2004, early 2005, and we had an incredible wealth of. I could name probably like 2 dozen people who came through that business, who've gone on to do exceptional things, right? And when you have access to brilliant people who cared and were just interested in pushing things forward and learning how to do things quicker or better or cheaper, you learn loads of stuff, right? And everyone's kind of contributing to this thing. And when I got given the job of heading up all of the bars, it made sense that I tried to basically produce a manual. So when we have a new starter, that here's this thing, right? And in that is 160 drinks. There's 60 original drinks from Match Bar. There's 80 drinks maybe from Match Bar, 80 classics. All of the people that have come before you, little bios on each person who and where they worked and who they were and why they were good or whatever. But then contributions from Jonathan about how he wants his business. So like an introductory manual, or whatever you call it, an induction to the company, the job descriptions for all of the bartender standards, just from bar back to junior bartender to bartender, senior bartender, bartender, bar manager, that kind of stuff. All of the job descriptions, the pay rates, our approach, the things that we value technically, explanations of why we value those things, approaches to hospitality from Sasha, from Daru, and I just tried to write it all down. How to use equipment, detailed stuff about as many things as possible, because firstly there was no bar manual like it, and secondly we just had the best people. And I got to the point where it was about 90% finished, the other 10% being all the photography that we didn't do. It was properly edited by the guy who was in charge of editing Condé Nast at the time, because he worked with the groups. He was a wine specialist, and he edited it. And there was probably about another 10% content, and then any photography obviously on top. And the aim was that every bartender that started us, and I think we were gonna charge them for this manual, and then if they stayed with us for more than 6 months, we could have money back, right?
That's a good idea.
So it was kind of like a longevity thing. And it made it out there, and it's on various websites, I think, now. And
I managed to track it down.
Yeah, and I've still got it on my laptop, and I'd love to kind of rewrite it, but it's just time. And
I mean, it holds up really well, the bits I was reading.
There's
some of the brands have changed a bit and that sort of thing, but like
the brands have changed, and we've learned more, but nothing that's there is wrong.
No.
We can add to it. And I wrote all this thinking that, do you know what? It's taken me 5 years in this company to learn this, right? How can I fast track new bartenders so that they don't need to wait to talk to their bar manager. They can it's there.
Yeah.
And so I spent about 18 months, 2 years trying to document all that stuff and put it in a manual, and I never quite finished it.
And then examinations were part of the whole process at the match, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about how that worked?
Yeah, so it was a monthly thing. We learned some content the month before. The following month, when we were learning the new content, we did a test on the previous month's content, and it was rewarded, right? So you would even get the 20, 30 questions that you needed to answer, right? You'd get a rough idea of what they were going to be because they'd be covered the month before. So you'd turn up, and the first 20 minutes of the next session was this test, right? And you just got given a bit of paper and a pen, question all the way through. Some were fucking difficult, some were easy. And if you scored the best, you might end up getting sent to Chamonix for 2 days to go ski. Or you would get an iPod, or you would get to go to a distillery, right? So these things were with reward.
Yeah.
It was within your interest to learn this shit because it firstly made you a better bartender, but you also got something out of it. Every single session got a reward.
Any punishment for particularly bad?
If you were consistently bad, it was very clear you didn't give a hoot.
You probably just not the wrong
you were in the wrong work. Yeah. And some people didn't contribute, some did. But there was about 4 or 5 of us that were just like, every month, my sole objective is to beat you. That is it. That is a highly motivating.
Oh yeah. Gamifying. Make a competitive environment for it. Yeah.
I do not want to leave and find out a week later that I lost to person X.
Yeah.
As I'll be vexed. So study, learn to the point that you can recite without looking up. And you learn a lot of stuff that way.
So what have you carried forward from this to Satans?
Very little.
Why?
Because the nature of learning has changed massively, right? We would sit there for 2 hours and just stare at who was talking to us, and we would soak it up, right? It's not impossible, it's possible, totally possible, but getting people to engage in that way now is harder. It needs to be almost like 30 seconds when you've lost someone's attention.
An Instagram reel.
Right? This is the truth.
This is the problem, right?
So the knowledge side of things with which we were expected to learn, we focus on less. People learn this stuff that way. The training we do now is practical, and it's not practical on shift, it's practical off shift. So it's 1-to-1 with Dan or with someone else. And we will come in and we'll make drinks and we'll throw tons of booze down the sink, but we will make sure that you know that needs to be like that. And we'll do it without the pressure of service, in our own time. And it takes a while. But when you come out of that process, you are good and you will make good drinks and you will understand why you're making those good drinks. And I can put you anywhere and you will still make good drinks without needing to worry about any of the other stuff, because you know the reasons why. And we do it that way. Because for us, if we had 100 people, I don't know if we could do it that way.
Yeah.
We've got 10, so we can. But it produces exceptional bartenders that I would genuinely hang my hat on making just about any drink going.
Cool. Well, look, I've got a bit of a surprise for you to finish up.
Oh, right. Wow.
The match bar training program was legendary.
Mm.
The exams were legendary. You also used to write the questions for the class bartender of the year.
I did.
Which,
Which
I competed in a couple
I
of
know
times.
you did. Yeah. Oh my word.
Yeah,
Wow.
I don't have the questions for that examination. I did email Simon Difford to see if I could get them. He told me it was so long ago they're on a hard drive he can't even access
I
anymore.
possibly have them on a really old computer, but I can't remember that stuff.
Well, if you had them, that would have ruined this next bit.
Are you going to test me?
Yeah, if this goes badly wrong, then we will just cut it out.
Yeah.
But I thought it'd be fun.
Yeah.
So I went through the manual
Yeah.
and I pulled out 8 questions.
Okay, go on.
Of varying degrees of difficulty. I think you're going to nail most, if not all of them.
Oh, okay.
I've been relatively kind, I think.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. This is big pressure. Yeah, go on.
All right, question 1.
Yeah.
What is the difference between aged vodka and grain whiskey?
Okay. This was a great question. So, the whiskey, invariably barley, aged vodka can be made from different raw materials. Ultimately, was the key thing that we were looking for with the answer to that. But actually, in terms of process, there's not a great deal of difference.
Mm-hmm.
But raw material was one of the key things. Yes.
Yep. What is the name of the statue that appears on every bottle of Havana Club?
Gerardia.
You know what I've done here? I've forgotten to actually write down the answers.
Yeah.
So we're just going to have to either take your word for it, but you're right.
Look it up.
Yeah. What does the word Stolichnaya translate as?
Oh, no. I already could. I know. I don't know this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to give the answers in the roundup that I put at the end of the podcast, because everyone's going to be like, this is the shit quiz ever. We don't even know the answers. I can't remember it myself.
No.
This one's devious. I love this question so much, and it was only because I saw it in the manual and I was like, oh my god.
Is it so Stolichnaya released another vodka, and the word elite was involved there somewhere.
Yeah, Stoli Elite.
Yeah. It will come to me.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
So question 4. What are the dimensions of a Hoshizaki ice cube?
So the ones that we use are 32, 32, 32. And that's the XL cube. But you probably got the medium or the large, which I think is 28, 28, 28. Or maybe 30, 30, 30.
28, 28, 32.
Okay.
Yeah, very close. I mean, you were very much on the right ballpark.
I know what we use.
Yeah.
I've not bought one of the large or medium-sized cubers for a long time, but we're at XL, which is 32, 32, 32.
Yeah. Citrus wedges should be cut at either 45 degrees or what other angle?
40. Is this in the manual?
It's in the manual.
Shit. So 45 degrees is going to give you 90. That gives you 8 per segment. So it's probably going to be 60 degrees.
Correct. Well done. You worked it out. This is niche.
Fuck.
So within the manual, for context, there is a list of practically every spirit mixer combination and what it should be garnished with. So I picked one of the most obscure ones, okay? And it's sort of, well, no, actually, I won't say. A rum and Red Bull should be garnished with what fruit?
We didn't even sell it.
I know. Well, I looked at it. I was like, has anyone ever actually served that? I'll give you a clue. It's a trick question.
I would suggest the answer to that would be no garnish.
Correct. Yeah. No garnish. Yeah.
Oh my word.
This
is devious.
Yeah, I know. It's evil. I sprung it on you. This one's tricky as well. I've probably been a bit mean. It's a wine one.
Oh.
Because you always used to do wine ones for the class bartender of the year, and I always used to think, hold on a second, we're supposed to know about wine.
Go on.
I'm adding 12 to 20 grams of sugar per litre of wine for my champagne dosage.
Dosage, yeah.
What classification of wine would that make?
12 to 20.
Yeah.
It's not brut, sec. Brut.
Extra sec,
Okay.
which isn't sec at all. It's
not sec,
actually
it's
quite
still-
sweet.
yeah.
Yeah.
Brutal.
I think you did really well,
I
actually.
don't think I did.
No, you did all right. It was mean. Do you want should we keep it in or not?
Yeah, maybe. The ones I get right, yeah.
Just skip past the ones you got wrong.
Yeah. You can just be like, eh.
I mean, look, if it makes you feel any better, if I'd been asked those questions without any revision whatsoever, I would
Demi-sec, was it? Was it sec?
extra sec.
Extra sec.
Extra sec, yeah.
12 and 20 isn't too much, is it?
No, it's not. So you go from so brute,
Not to 6 or 6 to...
yeah, brute's the next driest from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what's demi-sec?
Demi-sec would be the next sweetest after that.
After
I think.
that.
So it'd be 20 to, don't know,
28?
something like that. Yeah.
That is raw.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
So I would have got less than you, I think. I definitely would have got the Hoshizaki. I wouldn't have got the Stolly. I would have got the...
I didn't get Stolly. What is Stolly? Let's look
I know, let's find it. I would have got the grain whiskey and vodka. I would have got the fruit cutting. I mean, obviously, how Match Bar garnished their rum and Red Bulls probably would have been a mystery to me.
Yeah, of course it would be. Yeah. Stollish. No, yeah. I can't even spell it.
Just bear with us, guys. We're just going to look this up before we finish up. By the way, I didn't mention the whiskey we're drinking. This is Black Rock's own Chichibu cask.
It's very nice.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
62% ABV, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Did you find it?
No, I'm going to reception, actually.
No, it's okay. I'll put it on the end of the podcast. I'll message each other
Yeah.
later. But
I didn't shame myself. I didn't do...
no, you did all right. Look,
I did better on the whiskey distilleries.
which whiskey?
The
Oh well, I tested you in Edinburgh. Yeah, you did well on that. Yeah. You did well on that. Yeah, I was doing a whiskey quiz for Johnny Walker, and you did do well on that.
Yeah, I think whatever I missed out like by about 100 meters.
Yeah, you were close. Yeah, it was pin the tail on the whiskey distillery, and we had 3 distilleries: Kalila, Kleinleash, and
Glenkinchie.
Yeah, and you did really well on that.
Yeah. Fuck. That's all.
What a great way to end.
Yeah, thank you. But I had to embarrass somebody in 10 minutes. Yeah, that was great. Yeah,
Well, we'll decide later on if you want to keep it in there. I think you should. I think it humanizes you, Kev.
yeah,
It makes people who otherwise think you're just bulletproof on bar knowledge.
no, I'm not.
Even you are fallible.
I definitely I was very good at one point. There was not a lot I felt like I wouldn't have been able to. If it was available and it was written down somewhere in a magazine or a book, I probably would have nailed it. But your priorities as a business operator and owner are vastly different now, aren't they?
Yeah. And parent.
And may God. Yeah, that is a missing up world. Wow.
And another conversation. We'll leave it there.
Thank you, Tris.
Kevin Armstrong.
That was awesome. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You too. Thanks.